Developing right now on Morning News Now, diplomacy delayed. Moments ago, President Trump arriving in Switzerland a few hours late after a mechanical issue forced Air Force One to turn around last night. The president on his way to address world leaders at the World Economic Forum in Davos as he pushes forward with plans to take over Greenland, despite pushback from key European allies.
How far are you willing to go to acquire Greenland?
You'll find out.
We need to respect the world order. International law is not a game.
All this just days after the president threatened to impose tariffs until a deal is made and told NBC News he hasn't ruled out military action. We will take you over the seas. Plus, escalation in Minnesota, the Department of Justice serving subpoenas to several Democratic lawmakers, including Minnesota Governor Tim Walz and Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey, as it investigates whether officials conspired to impede a federal immigration crackdown. More on the controversy, the clashes, and what could happen next. Also this morning, here we snow again. This morning, much of the U.S. bracing for another round of winter storms and freezing temperatures with tens of millions of people under winter alerts. We are tracking the conditions, the warnings, and the areas most at risk. And work it out. Researchers say they have figured out the best kind of exercise for a longer life. We will share tips on updating your gym routine. And good morning. We're very happy to have you here with us today. I'm Savannah Sellers. Joe is off this morning, but guess what? Christine Romans is going to join us a little later this hour. We're going to begin our show, though, in Switzerland, where President Trump landed moments ago and is set to give a high-stakes speech this morning before the global elite at the World Economic Forum in Davos. The president's arrival was delayed, though, by an electrical issue on Air Force One. Now, the plane was forced to return to Joint Base Andrews before everyone on board was switched to a backup plane. The visit comes amid heightened tensions between the U.S. and Europe over the president's determination to buy resource-rich Greenland. Now, Denmark, which the territory is a part of, and Greenland itself have consistently said that the Arctic island is not for sale. Europe and NATO have also come out in defense of Greenland's sovereignty. The disagreement prompted President Trump to threaten additional tariffs against 8 European countries if Greenland is not sold to the U.S. by February 1st. It's a threat that was widely condemned by the European Union, which is now considering retaliatory measures. Well, speaking at the White House yesterday, President Trump said he was optimistic about finding a solution during this trip to Davos. Listen.
We have a lot of meetings scheduled on Greenland, and I think things are going to work out pretty well, actually. I think that we will work something out where NATO is going to be very happy and where we're going to be very happy. But we need it for security purposes. We need it for national security.
How far are you willing to go to acquire Greenland?
You'll find out.
We've got a team standing by to talk about all this and more. We're going to start off, though, with NBC News senior White House correspondent Gabe Gutierrez. He is in Washington. Gabe, thanks for being with us. So the president is getting ready to give this speech in Switzerland. First, though, I want to start with the trip itself. That's a bumpy start. What happened with Air Force One?
You know, Savannah, good morning. The president had said that this would be an interesting trip to Davos. Well, before he even got there, it got interesting. The president leaving late yesterday, and the plane, Air Force One, was turned around a short time after takeoff, had to head back to Joint Base Andrews, as you said. The White House saying that it was a minor electrical issue. The president boarded a smaller plane without incident and is now on his way to Davos. But again, bit of a hiccup right before the president even got to Switzerland in the first place, Savannah.
So, of course, this trip abroad coming amid his desire that he has made quite known to acquire Greenland. And also, this is the first time since he's threatened those additional tariffs over Greenland, and obviously heading to leaders of many of those countries that would be impacted by said tariffs. Clearly, this is going to be a major source of tension at Davos. What can we expect from the president's speech this morning? What's his message going to be?
Look, the president at this point feels emboldened after several foreign policy moves over the last several weeks. Of course, the ouster of Nicolas Maduro, arrested to stand trial here in the U.S. And the president feels that he and the United States should take over Greenland. This is something that he said now for quite some time, but really over the past several days, there's been this increasing back and forth, there's increasing tension with NATO allies. We heard from the president yesterday at the White House. He says that leaders, other world leaders, they're nice to him to his face and sometimes not so much when he's not around. But he doesn't seem to be backing down here, Savannah. And so we do expect him to take quite make a bold statement when he addresses world leaders in Davos.
Gabe, and tell us what we have been hearing from other world leaders' speeches at Davos so far. It seems like this rift over tariffs, Greenland, it has united European and NATO allies against President Trump, really, right?
Yes, we've already been hearing from world leaders, as you said, at the forum. We've heard from the British Prime Minister as well as French President Emmanuel Macron, even a Danish lawmaker who used profane language to push back against what Donald Trump was planning to do in Greenland. Let's listen to what some of the world leaders have already said.
We do prefer respect to bullies. We do prefer science to plotism, and we do prefer rule of law to brutality.
Let me be direct. We are in the midst of a rupture, not a transition. Great powers have begun using economic integration as weapons, tariffs as leverage.
And of course, Savannah, this all comes just days after a remarkable text message exchange that, by the way, we've now been seeing publicly with the Norway's prime minister releasing this exchange between himself and President Trump, where world leaders have been trying to de-escalate the situation here, and President Trump responding to Norway's prime minister, linking his perceived snub by the Nobel Committee. And then we see those live pictures now in Switzerland of the U.S. delegation arriving there. But Savannah, a lot of tensions here, and we expect this to play out over the next 2 days in Davos.
All right, Gabe, we know you will keep bringing us the latest there. Gabe, thank you so much. Well, I want to get back to this unplanned turnaround of Air Force One last night. We're going to bring in NBC News aviation analyst Jeff Guzzetti, also a retired aircraft accident investigator. Jeff, always great to have you with us to help really break down some of these moments. There you are seeing the president arriving there in Switzerland after this delay. So the New York Times is reporting some details here, saying that some in-cabin lighting wasn't working. The AP is reporting some lights went off briefly in the cabin after takeoff. As a pilot, you hear details like that. You know, ultimately this plane was turned around. What kind of electrical problems could develop mid-flight that would make you, make that drastic decision like that, turn the plane around?
Good morning, Savannah. Well, there could be a myriad of things, right? So this is a 35-year-old aircraft, over 35 years old, this 747, and it's heavily modified for electrical equipment, for avionics, for communication devices, security equipment. So it needs a lot of energy to power that equipment, and the 4 engines on the 747 have generators. So perhaps a generator came offline, perhaps there was an electrical bus that failed. I don't think the president and his team were in danger. I just think they were inconvenienced. Again, an older airplane with a lot of electrical equipment, and something minor occurred.
And again, right now on your screen, these are live pictures of President Trump arriving in Switzerland, where he will be addressing those world leaders at Davos, the World Economic Forum, and a few hours late, as we've been discussing, because of this delay. You mentioned the age of Air Force One. There are basically 2 planes that are predominantly used sort of interchangeably as Air Force One. They're both around that age, both been flying for nearly 4 decades. We're not sure which one was in service last night, but what kinds of technical issues can present themselves with an airplane of that age?
Well, so the wiring is old, and so you might get chafing in the wiring, and a piece of equipment might short out. And you've got, even though that this is the president's plane, they really wanted, some of the stuff has to be low tech so it can't be hacked. So you just might be dealing with older type of analog electrical equipment, and they can be persnippety at times. And I think this occurred a little less than an hour right after takeoff, and out of an abundance of caution, they decided just to turn back around and then use the newer 757, which is typically Air Force Two for the vice president. Well, it became Air Force One when Trump and his staff moved over to that aircraft.
Yeah, you mentioned that 757, the fact that the Air Force One, the two there in that fleet, those are specially modified Boeing 747s. What are the main differences between what has been modified on Air Force One versus like what we might fly on?
So it's basically the same airframe, right? It's got the same look as a 747 that's in passenger service. But the inside is completely carved out to have like a little flying oval office, a communication center. It's got a little passenger seating section for the press. And again, it's got a lot of additional military avionics and electrical equipment on board that draws a lot of power. And that modification was likely involved in this minor electrical issue.
Jeff Guzzetti, thank you very much for covering one piece of this important story this morning as the president gets on the road. Let's cover another piece of that story now and get the view from Greenland. NBC News correspondent Ellison Barber, she has made her way there for us. Ellison, good morning. First off, just help us understand, walk us through, give us a little refresher on Greenland's history with Denmark. We keep on saying it's this Danish territory, and really its strategic significance to Denmark and really to the world with its location.
Yeah, so it is a Danish territory. It is largely autonomous, though. So it was initially a Danish colony, but colonial status, that formally ended in 1953. And since then, there have been two major pieces of legislation expanding Greenland's independence. The most significant one, the Self-Government Act of 2009. And basically what that did is almost everything you can think of domestically, Greenland is in charge of that. They have their own government. They have their own parliament. When it comes to things like foreign affairs, defense, and monetary policy, Denmark still oversees that. Two other really significant things that came out of that act in 2009 is the fact that Greenlanders are able to hold a referendum at any point when they feel politically and economically ready, if they choose to vote on whether or not to become fully independent. So they essentially have an exit clause in that legislation. The other big thing is that they get a massive annual block grant from Denmark, about $560 million that makes up a significant portion of their annual budget. So in terms of the mineral resources that are here, the things that people are interested in on a bigger scale, the United States has had a military presence in Greenland since World War II. There's a space base that we have up north. It's considered a cornerstone of the U.S.'s missile warning system as well as surveillance for space. Then there's this aspect of rare earth minerals. Greenland has some of the largest deposits of rare earth minerals. Those are incredibly important for the tech world, for things like AI. Historically, because Greenland is 80% ice, it's been almost impossible to access them. But with climate change, that is starting to change. And there's a thought that in the decades to come that it could be more accessible, making it also really financially interesting for a lot of parties here. Savannah.
Ellison, and now I want some color from the ground. I mean, President Trump's still refusing to rule out military action in Greenland, saying, you know, you'll essentially find out what lengths we would go to here. How worried, let's start with the officials there. How worried are officials about that possibility?
So yesterday there was a press conference with Greenland's prime minister and deputy prime minister and finance minister, and they told Greenlanders that while they think a military invasion by the United States is unlikely, the prime minister said that they cannot rule it out. So they said they are working with territorial officials to come up with civil preparedness plans so they can give people who live here guidance in the event that happens, including things like having food stored for at least 5 days for an entire family in the event there is some sort of military action. But again, the prime minister also saying that they think it is not likely, but they feel like they have to be prepared because, in his words, they can't rule it out at this point either. Savannah?
Ellison, what about the people of Greenland? What are you hearing from them about all this?
You know, it's a lot of frustration, anger. Many people kept saying it's crazy that Donald Trump keeps insisting on this. The message we hear from people again and again, and you see it, by the way, when you're in town, on store signs. They even have T-shirts that they're selling that says Greenland is not for sale. A lot of people also telling us that right now they feel afraid because they're not sure what could happen next. Take a listen.
He must understand this. Because no is no.
We Greenlander, we don't want to be Americans. We really live in danger because we don't know what it can happen with Greenland. Because we can be bombed like Venezuela have been bombed.
So that is a real sense you get from speaking with people here, is that they're not just frustrated or angry. They genuinely are afraid because they feel like there's so much uncertainty at this time. One person telling us that they look at Donald Trump as an authoritarian, saying we have Putin on one side of the world, we have Trump on the other, both of them trying to do the same things. Savannah.
All right, Ellison Barber, thank you very much for your reporting from the ground. Super helpful for context here. Well, for more on the president's push to control Greenland, let's get the foreign perspective. We're going to bring in Danish Member of Parliament Flemming Møller Mortensen. He is a member of the country's Social Democrat Party and a spokesman on Greenlandic affairs. Flemming, thank you very much for joining us this morning. Really helpful to get to speak with you. I just want to start here. I mean, how surprised are you at how confrontational this has become, and really the fact that this is even an issue in the first place?
I think all Danes, all people living inside the Kingdom of Denmark, we feel that this is really unbelievable. And it's unbelievable because we have for decades been very, very close allied to the US. So this is frightening everybody, and we think it can't be right, because it should be dialogue and political discussions that should be the frame of how to talk about the challenges in the Arctic when it comes to security and other matters.
In terms of security, I mean, President Trump's argument here is that Denmark can't protect Greenland from China, from Russia, like the U.S. could. In your view, is there any merit to that argument?
No. Because exactly as your reporter told, that the US has been in Greenland since World War II and also during the World War II. And there's an agreement back from the 50s explaining that the US can do almost whatever they want to do in Greenland. And every year we have discussions between US, Greenland and Denmark how to follow that agreement, and if new things has to be followed up. And also for decades we have been having a common understanding that the Arctic should be a low tense area where we should not develop more than needed. So US are able to do almost whatever they want to do in Greenland without taking over the country. So to us it's really, really hard to see the Trump administration making that pressure and showing that aggression to a very close ally as the Kingdom of Denmark.
Flemming, yesterday one of your colleagues, another Danish member of parliament, made headlines here in the U.S. for using some strong language directed at President Trump. This was during a European Parliament debate. What are you hearing from other members of parliament and also Danes in general about President Trump's threats?
We think that it should not be. And I tell you that the Danish Parliament and the Greenlandic Parliament, we are very united in saying that Greenland is not for sale, but we want to take up the diplomatic dialogue. If there will be anything we can do, we will do it together with the US. But taking over Greenland, taking over the Greenlandic population, as it was just something you can buy, that's really, really hard to see. And of course, that's frightening people, especially in Greenland, but also the whole Danish population is really, how to say it, worried. More than worried, we really fear what's going to happen. Also because the Trump administration and Trump himself has expressed that many times that it could also be a matter of how to use the defense, the forces to take over Greenland. And we are NATO members. The whole Kingdom of Denmark are a member of NATO, and we of course are willing, and we are also planning to invest more in the Arctic region, both from the Danish side but also from other European countries. And that's also what we see just now, that the European NATO countries, we are really united in saying and showing to the US administration that we are willing to do more in Arctic, but let's talk about it. Let's talk about how to do it. It should not be a matter of taking over Greenland. It's unbelievable that we are in that situation with a very close ally as the US has been for decades.
Flemming, you mentioned NATO, you mentioned European allies. Take us inside what you know about right now as other EU nations and as those NATO allies work with Denmark to try to come up with a strategy here, first to respond just generally to this threat from President Trump, to the fact that he will not rule out using military force to take Greenland. But then also on the other side of this, right, is it's not for sale. And then he says there's going to be this 10% tariff. What's going on between allies right now to try to come up with a strategy to respond?
It has been more than great to see how many allied we are having as Kingdom of Denmark. So much solidarity has been shown to our kingdom, and that's from so many countries. Also to them, it's a very, very difficult situation to see that allied are treating each other that way as we see just now. So we have seen it from European countries, but also from countries outside Europe. And of course, that's extremely important because the Kingdom of Denmark, we are not able to do that much. But if we bring it to the EU Commission, if we bring it to the organization of all NATO countries, having these discussions about what should be the track for better security and forces in the Arctic, we will do whatever we are able to do. And it's so great to see that we're not speaking only with the Danish voice, but we are speaking with a lot of other countries' voices too.
Fleming, we've had some recent world events, totally different set of circumstances, but where the president has essentially ended up making good on using military force to get something done that he's been discussing publicly. Something that he has not ruled out here, as I mentioned, and as he has done in several different fashions publicly recently. How do you think this ultimately gets resolved, knowing that that threat is on the table?
First, I will say that I really understand what also your reporter picked up from Greenland and the capital of Nuuk, that so many people living in Greenland, they are really frightened. They are really fearing what's going to happen. And I understand them. And it's so hard to hear families that they are in a very difficult situation with their kids and youngsters to understand the risk of their country just now. But of course, as a politician and as a former minister, I believe in picking up the dialogue between countries, and that has been the most efficient way of securing peace in so many years. That has been talking together, trying to understand each other, not making a pressure during the medias to other countries and to a very close allied. So we are extremely shocked about the situation. Yeah. And of course, it's nice to hear also from the US that politicians there are having an understanding about the situation in the Kingdom of Denmark and also supporting us.
Fleming Müller-Martensen, thank you so much for joining us this morning. We so appreciate your time and your perspective gives us a great understanding here. Thank you.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Well, back here at home, might not have to tell you that the weather is a big story. January's deep freeze, though, is showing parts of the East Coast a little mercy this morning. It's not going to be for long, though. Tens of millions of Americans from the Northeast to Florida are still feeling winter's icy chill, even though there will be a little warm up this afternoon. Lake effect snow. Look at the snow. It pummeled western New York, creating some pretty dangerous driving conditions. Today's brief relief from the frigid temperatures, though, it is just a tease. That's because a fresh Arctic blast has taken aim at the south this weekend, and then there's this chance of a big winter storm all up and down the East Coast. While you try and keep warm, let's get a check at your morning News Now weather, let you know what you're getting into as you head out the door. Andrea Romero is here. She's got more details on what lies ahead. Good morning.
Good morning, Savannah. There's a lot going on in the weather department today, so let's take it piece by piece. We're going to begin talking about the lake effect snow. Of course, we have these snow showers that will be expanding into the northeast as this low pressure continues to travel through the area. Cold and blustery through the northeast with heavy bands of lake effect snow continuing, especially downwind of Lake Ontario. Ontario, Lake Erie. That's where we have those heavy snowfall amounts. As we can look, the lake effect snow will continue to pile up, and the highest totals will be probably downwind of Lake Ontario. Looking at some of those totals, we can see over 6 to 12 inches, especially here downwind of Lake Ontario and also Lake Michigan. We can see some high amounts in that area. Now, as far as the temperatures, some areas do get a brief relief from the extreme cold. That will be today, and then that relief of the cold will continue into parts of the East Coast tomorrow, with temperatures that will be maybe a little bit above average after dealing with all that Arctic air the last couple of days. We'll definitely enjoy that slight warm up, but it won't last for long because we can see that Arctic cold air that will bring back those cold temperatures into the weekend. Especially, we're looking at sub-zero temperatures and wind chills that will be even colder. And of course, the cold air is the first ingredient that we need for that major storm that we're tracking for later this week. It begins as a Pacific storm that's going to be moving into the southwest. It's going to be picking up all that Pacific moisture, surging into the plains, and then we're also going to get some of that Gulf moisture that's going to be feeding into the storm, and that's going to combine with that Arctic air. It's going to be crashing into that tropical moisture, and then that's what's going to be producing the storm that's going to be bringing snow and ice Friday afternoon, stretching from parts of New Mexico, some rain in Arizona, Texas. We're looking at snow that's going to be moving across all that area, crippling ice storm from Texas to the Carolinas, and then we have that heavy snow that will be moving into the Northeast for the weekend. So we're talking about perhaps the biggest storm that we've seen in several years that's going to be impacting a large part of the country. And of course, we're talking about snow, and we're talking about ice, which is so dangerous.
So dangerous for driving. Flying's not going to happen. You know what, though? If it's this cold, I would rather it be pretty with some snow.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
And that's what we're going to have in the Northeast, but some areas are going to get that ice. So that's what worries me the most.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you so much. We'll see you in a little bit. Well, in Minnesota, the Trump administration is continuing its crackdown on anti-ICE protests in the state and on its Democratic leaders. Yesterday, the Justice Department subpoenaed at least 5 Democratic officials from the state. It includes Governor Tim Walz and also Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey. This is all over, of course, immigration enforcement. Well, today marks 2 weeks since 37-year-old Renee Good was shot and killed by an ICE officer in her vehicle in Minneapolis. That then intensified the anti-ICE protests there. Initially, the Trump administration argued Good weaponized her vehicle against the officer. Now, though, President Trump appears in a way to be shifting his tone on her death.
I felt horribly when I was told that the young woman who was had the tragedy. It's a tragedy. It's a horrible thing. Everybody would say, ICE would say the same.
NBC News correspondent Maggie Vespa is in Minneapolis, as she has been covering all the latest for us. Maggie, good morning. So just first, what can you tell us about these subpoenas and how Minnesota's Democratic lawmakers are responding to this?
Sure, Savannah. I mean, these subpoenas are a striking escalation in a process that we knew already was playing out. The Department of Justice had said that the Trump administration was investigating those basically top Minnesota Democrats. It also includes Attorney General Keith Ellison and St. Paul's Mayor Kali Herr, and basically everybody unilaterally speaking out and blasting this move. Governor Walz calling it political theater, calling the tactics baseless. I want to pull up Mayor Frey's statement about this, though, and read you that in full. He posted this on X last night, and he said, when the federal government weaponizes its power to intimidate local leaders for doing their jobs, every American should be concerned. He goes on to say, we shouldn't live in a country where federal law enforcement is used to play politics or crack down on local voices they disagree with. And that last part is really poignant because sort of the main factor, or at least a main factor that the DOJ has said that they're investigating is the words used by these local politicians. It became incredibly infamous when Mayor Frey said ICE should get the F out of Minneapolis. That's been replayed a lot. Governor Walz also saying that ICE should leave the city. So it's been a question of, is their speech punishable? And critics have said that they find that alarming, including those politicians. Savannah.
Maggie, as we mentioned, it's been 2 weeks since Renee Good was fatally shot by an ICE officer in Minneapolis, and really this just launched and intensified anti-ICE protests across the state. Tell us, you are there on the ground. What is the current situation on the ground? What are these protests looking like?
Yeah, so basically there are almost always protests, like every afternoon, every evening outside the local ICE headquarters. You see a lot of the most chaotic moments there. That's in St. Paul. And then you also just have random protests popping up around the city. Basically, when ICE shows up anywhere, the amount of people, that's outside the local headquarters there, the amount of people, the amount of residents, like everyday people, U.S. citizens who have whistles and who are communicating on encrypted chats like Signal to let everyone know when ICE pops up in a neighborhood, they all just come running out of their homes and start blowing whistles and yelling. So it's like these clashes pop up around the city as these enforcement operations continue. And it's also why you're seeing videos of arrests and ICE operations on the ground, because basically, Savannah, everyone is filming a video just like that one. That's gone viral. Everyone has their cameras out. And I should note that video right there is ICE going into the home of a U.S. citizen. There he is, Chung Lee Scott Tao, with no criminal record. We checked, and he was later let go an hour later. And critics also blasting that citizens are being detained. Savannah.
Maggie, a source familiar with the plan said Vice President J.D. Vance is set to visit Minneapolis tomorrow. What do we know about his planned visit?
Right. We just know that he's planning to make comments here and have a roundtable discussion with, quote, local leaders and community members. That's according to that source familiar. We haven't gotten any names as to who he plans to sit down with or talk with. We haven't gotten any kind of schedule tied to this, but this would be the first time a top Trump official, or we should say anyway, the White House has made a visit to Minneapolis since the shooting of Renee Good. As you point out, today is the 2-week mark since that moment. So obviously it'll be a major moment in this city's recovery and in the post-shooting aftermath, and we're going to see what kind of impact it has here. Savannah.
All right. Maggie Vespa, thank you very much for your reporting there from the ground. Well, much more to come here on Morning News Now. Later this hour, At Risk, the alarming study linking smoke from wildfires and autism. Up first, though, after the break, under review, the Supreme Court set to weigh President Trump's attempt to fire Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook. We will break down the case that could have wide-reaching impacts. Stay with us. Welcome back. The Supreme Court is set to hear arguments today on President Trump's bid to fire Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook. The outcome could make it easier for the president to dismiss other Fed officials and impact the Fed's independence.
Yeah, the president initially tried to dismiss Cook last year through a social media post. He accused her of mortgage fraud, but she denies the accusation, and formal charges were never filed. In October, the conservative majority court allowed Cook to stay in her post until they could hear the case contesting her dismissal.
NBC News legal analyst Danny Ceballos is here on set with us to give his take on the potential impact this could have on President Trump's powers. We're also, though, going to bring in NBC News legal affairs reporter Gary Grunback for a closer look at the case. And Gary, I will start with you for that. Walk us through the facts here. What are some of the bigger points each side will want the justices to consider?
Yeah, this is essentially a high-profile employment dispute, but it's really about the Fed's independence. The president can only fire a member of the Federal Reserve for cause. So the big question is there enough cause here? These are allegations of mortgage fraud from when before she was appointed and confirmed by the U.S. Senate to the Federal Reserve. And NBC News has obtained bank documents that really cut the idea that there was any bank fraud at all by Lisa Cook. In the Federal Reserve's 112-year history, a president has never before tried to remove a member of the Federal Reserve. They have a long and storied history of independence from political matters just like this. But over the past year, the Supreme Court has said it was okay for the president to remove members of the National Labor Relations Board, of the Federal Trade Commission, and of the Merit Systems Protection Board. We'll see by June if it's okay for him to fire members of the Fed.
Yeah, Gary, this is the first test of the president's ability to fire somebody for cause on the Fed. And Lisa Cook is claiming the dismissal violates her Fifth Amendment rights. How does that apply here?
Yeah, so this is all about due process, right? She's actually going to be represented by a conservative attorney, Paul Clement. He's a legendary Supreme Court attorney. And he says that she needs an opportunity to be able to rebut Trump's claims here, that, in fact, she was not committing any mortgage fraud and she should not be fired for that. Solicitor General John Sauer says, actually, it's up to the president to decide what is or is not for cause. We'll see what the justices have to say.
Danny, let's bring you into this discussion here. So Lisa Cook's argument is that she was fired over social media without due process that violated her constitutional rights. Do you think she has an argument?
This is a strand of due process called procedural due process. It has to do with notice and an opportunity to be heard. And that's what Cook is arguing, is that she never got that opportunity. The Trump administration says she doesn't get that opportunity. Meanwhile, Lisa Cook cites a case that we rarely see cited at the Supreme Court. We've all heard of Marbury v. Madison, where one of the justices concluded that Marbury, this is going back 200 years, had a vested interest in his office. So the question is ultimately, as it often is in Trump administration disputes, the Trump administration takes a position that no matter what a statute says, I'm the president, and the president's essentially the king. If this is in the executive branch, I get to do whatever I want.
Danny, let's talk about the mortgage fraud claim at the center of all of this, right? She denies the allegations. She hasn't been charged. No financial institution has come up with a complaint. You know, the Federal Reserve chief has said all of this is a pretext, essentially, for, an assault on the independence of the Fed. Does all of that hurt the Trump administration's claim here if they haven't sort of proven the allegation, or the allegation has just not been followed up on?
Yeah, the Trump administration's claim here is consistent with its others, which is essentially because I am the president, I decide who is a federal employee. I decide whether I remove this person. So the question of whether or not this is even a fair reason to remove someone, this allegation of mortgage fraud, not only is it my call as president, the courts can't even review it. We hear this as a common refrain in Trump administration arguments. And then, of course, the Cook side of the argument is, of course, you can review this because the statute says for cause. Someone has to determine what for cause is. It's not the president. It should be the courts.
That's the first test of that, really.
Gary, Lisa Cook's boss, if that's Fed Chair Jerome Powell, also under investigation and will reportedly be in attendance today, really just to overscore the importance of all this. Does that play into today's arguments at all and remind us where this sort of feud between Jerome Powell and the president stands?
Yeah, what a Federal Reserve chairman does and says can and does move markets both here in the U.S. and around the globe. Traditionally, they are very careful with their words. They stay on topic, and they're very careful not to wade into political matters. That's why it is so remarkable that he's not only going to be at the Supreme Court today with a number of others, we're told, as well, but also that he put out a video several days ago related to the investigation into him as it relates to the rebuilding of the Federal Reserve building here in Washington, D.C. Clearly, by being there today, he is not only Lisa Cook's boss, but he's also sending a message to the president.
Gary and Danny, thank you both for walking us through this one.
All right, new this morning, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says he is changing his stance and joining President Trump's Board of Peace.
NBC News International correspondent Claudio Lavanga joins us from Rome to take us around the world in 60 seconds. Hey, Claudio.
Savannah, Christine, good morning. Well, that's right. Netanyahu today announced that he has agreed to join President Trump's Board of Peace, despite earlier criticism of the choice of the board members. Now, previously, Netanyahu said the composition of the board committee, which will oversee the ceasefire plan for Gaza, was not coordinated with the Israeli government and run contrary to its policy. President Trump is expected to provide more details about the board while he's in Davos for the World Economic Forum. Let's go now to Japan, where the man who fatally shot former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe 3.5 years ago was sentenced to life in prison. In July 2022, Tetsuya Yamagami shot and killed Abe with a homemade gun while the former Prime Minister was delivering a campaign speech in the western city of Nara. In handing down the sentence, the judge called the shooting despicable. And let's end this tour of the world back here in Italy, where the Italian culture minister announced the discovery of the remains of a more than 2,000-year-old building attributed to Vitruvius, the ancient Roman architect and engineer known as the father of architecture. He inspired architects and artists for centuries, including Leonardo da Vinci. The mayor of Fano, the city where the remains of the basilica were found, called it the discovery of the century because he said scientists and researchers have been searching for it for over 500 years. Back to you, Christine, Savannah.
Very cool.
Very cool. Thanks, Claudio.
All right, coming up, signs of progress when it comes to Americans' health. Deaths from heart disease and stroke trending down.
Dr. Azar is here with the numbers for our weekly checkup. That is next here on Morning News Now.
Hey, we're back now for our weekly medical checkup. This morning, a new study is revealing a link between wildfire smoke and autism risk.
Yeah, plus researchers say they have identified the best exercise for a long life.
I'm listening to that.
I know, exactly.
Here to break down these health headlines is NBC News medical contributor Dr. Natalie Azar. Good morning, Dr. Azar. Okay, we're going to get to those studies we mentioned in just a moment, but let's start with heart health. Every year, the American Heart Association updates its statistics on heart disease and stroke. What are the changes they're reporting this morning?
So I think there's a little bit of good news, maybe a little bit of not so good news. So the good news is that overall, and by the way, this data is from 2023.
Okay.
The latest year for which we have this data available, is that the deaths related to heart disease and stroke have declined. They really kind of bumped up during the pandemic, and now they've come back down, which is excellent. However, heart disease and stroke still make up a quarter of all deaths in this country. And listen to this, the combination of heart attacks, so heart disease, all types of heart disease, and stroke cause more deaths than the number 2 and 3 reasons for death in this country, which are accidents and cancer. So kind of a little eye-opening, right? Okay,
Definitely.
Doctor's orders, I think you probably, this is pretty intuitive. Please get evaluated and know your cardiac risk. Up to 80% of heart disease, cardiovascular disease risk is something that you can control, right? So something environmental, behavioral. We can't change our age, we can't change our genetics, but there's so many things that we can modify to improve our cardiovascular health and outlook.
Let's talk about the one that Christine mentioned, this link between wildfire smoke and autism. What is this?
Right. So this is interesting. So, we talk a lot about the causes of autism, and while there never will be one cause, and wildfire smoke is not going to be the number one cause. We know that genetics are important, environmental exposures are important, and researchers for years have actually implicated pollution, air pollution, as a potential risk. So what these authors did, they took 200,000 births in Southern California between 2006 and 2014. What's on the rise in Southern California? Wildfire smoke. What's on the rise? Autism rates. And what they found was that women in their 3rd trimester, which is the period of most rapid, important fetal brain growth and development, that if you were exposed to more than 10 days consecutively, it increased the risk of autism by 23%.
Wow.
Not cause and effect, purely an association, but certainly things to keep in mind. Doctor's orders, limit exposure where you can. Not everybody can leave the area of wildfire, of course. Wear masks, use air filters. These are all things that hopefully scientists can study to see if that can mitigate the risk.
And finally, this next data I'm really excited about. Researchers may have found the best exercise to live a long life. And hint, variety is the spice of life.
You took my, was that your line? That was my line. I was like, there's a reason that we say this. We get older and older, and we keep on saying the same thing. And yes, indeed. So this was data from both the Women's Health Study, 30 years of data on nurses study, and then the health professional follow-up study, which was about 50,000 men. And yes, indeed, they found that variety was more important than quantity. And take a listen. And so this is interesting. The people who were more likely to exercise also engaged in other healthy behaviors and had other good cardiovascular risks. Guess what the number one thing was? Walking.
Okay.
And guess what didn't have an impact? Swimming.
Really?
Yeah, and I can think of reasons why, but I don't know why. But things like cycling weren't that impactful, but resistance training, racket things, tennis, right, is one of the big things. I'm sure pickleball is probably in there.
Switch it up. I mean, switch it up.
Switch it up. So doctor's orders, mix it up and stay active. Doing anything is better than doing nothing. But if, let's say, you're just a yogi or you're just a runner, you might really want to try to integrate some other things in there based on the study.
I know those treadmill warriors or those Stairmaster warriors that I just envy because they have all that stamina.
Yeah.
Maybe me just popping around the gym on different things is okay.
No, it's great, but think about it. You're only training one part of your body if you're doing one thing.
True.
And all of those things are important. Balance and strength and cardiovascular fitness and all that stuff.
Variety is the spice of life. Mix it up. Our brains are connected today.
Very funny.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You bet.
All right, coming up, promises kept. When we return, a look back at year one of President Trump's second term when it comes to the economy.
Plus, a plot twist in Netflix's bid to buy Warner Brothers Discovery as the companies announce a change in their agreement. Your Money Minute is next on Morning News Now. We are back with a look at the economy under President Trump's second term. Now, Mr. Trump ran on a campaign that promised, among, of course, other things, but to end inflation and make America affordable again. Well, 1 year in, let's do a gut check. Has he delivered on those promises? Yesterday, on the first anniversary of his return to the White House, Mr. Trump pointed the finger at former President Biden while touting his tariffs.
So everyone said, oh, tariffs will cause inflation. We have no inflation. We have very little inflation. Biden had inflation, and he didn't do tariffs. We had a huge problem. A lot of the Canadian auto plants are closing, and they're moving into the United States. Same thing with Mexico, same thing with Germany, and same thing with Japan and other countries. They're moving into the United States because of tariffs, because they don't want to pay the tariffs.
Christine, we are lucky to have you here alongside me today to break down some of these numbers. Okay, I want to read a quote from the president here. This was just from the spring. He promised jobs and factories will come roaring back into our country. Has that happened?
Well, so last year was the weakest year for job growth that wasn't a recession since 2003. About 584,000 net new jobs added in the year last year. And when you look at just put that in context, it's half of the job pace of the prior year. Now, the president yesterday saying in that press briefing that they don't want federal government jobs and they don't want jobs for immigrants. So that's why that number is lower. That's a whole new tack for the United States. It used to be that federal government jobs, well-paid jobs and immigrant jobs, those things grew the economy at large. But then you look at manufacturing in particular. You know, the point of so many of his tariffs is to bring manufacturing back to the United States. So many factories use what are called intermediate goods, meaning they import things to make their stuff in the U.S., so those tariffs make it more expensive. Every month since April, manufacturing jobs have shrunk in the United States in the first term.
Interesting. Okay, I want to keep on actually doing this where we're going through some of the things the president said, you fact-checking them. Here's another one. This is actually just from a few days ago. GDP is smashing expectations with the fastest growth for this country in many years. Is that true?
Yeah, look at there at 4.3% for the fourth quarter. That is a strong performance in the economy. The third quarter, very strong as well. Earlier in the year, that's third quarter and that's second quarter. But you can see a strong performance in the later part of the year. And that is really the strongest since, I think, 2023. There are hopes that the economy will remain strong in the beginning of this year, as measured by real gross domestic product. What you hear from consumers so often, though, is that this K-shaped economy, that, wow, the economy is booming. How come I feel like I'm not booming? The president yesterday said, you lost money under Joe Biden. You are richer under me. That is his message to the American people.
All right, here's one just from yesterday. This was at the speech at the White House. He said we had essentially no inflation. What do the numbers show?
There is still inflation. The inflation rate right now is about 2.7%. He's pointing to, see that big peak there? Yep. That's 9% inflation in 2022. Joe Biden, that's after.
I mean, that's a big drop.
And that is a big drop. But if you just zero in on the right side of that, the inflation rate right now is essentially exactly where it was when the president took office. So there hasn't been really meaningful improvement if you just look at the overall CPI. And inside some of these categories, prices for electricity, prices for auto insurance, prices for housing, prices for groceries. This is just under the president's first year. Gas prices, though, the president taking credit for that. And he points out that gas prices are down, and he thinks that will help lower prices for everything else.
Was that little break in the line, the government shutdown?
Yes.
Okay, there we go.
Very rare and
exactly. Okay, last one here. Another quote from him. This is also yesterday. We've had the best stock market in history.
Well, he was saying this as the market was tanking yesterday, by the way, but he has his first term a 13% return in the S&P 500. That's the most kind of broadest stock market gauge. You can see how that ranks with other presidents' first years in office. It's shy of what Joe Biden did, 16%. I will point out, presidents get too much credit and too much blame for the stock market under their watch, but the president of the United States takes credit for every one of these numbers that are good. Yesterday was a tough day in the markets. This Sell America trade on the idea that, are we back to square one with a trade war with Europe? We'll see how that all plays out today. The market is now lower for 2026, but it had been hitting record high after record high. So he is right on record high stock prices.
And it comes to that trade war, I mean, uncertainty, market doesn't like it, and that's exactly where we're back.
Exactly. They were really close to signing a U.S. trade deal. They'd worked on it since the summer, and now it seems to be in question.
Absolutely. All right, Christine, thank you so much. It was fun to have you here for that. Well, let's get you more money news this morning. Netflix just posted a pretty rosy earnings report, but investors are still hitting sell.
NBC News business and economy reporter Allie Cannell has your Money Minute. Good morning, Allie.
Good morning, Christine. And that's right, Netflix did deliver a strong quarter, but the stock moving lower this morning as the company looks ahead. Netflix says it's pausing buybacks of its own stock, which puts money in shareholders' pockets, and warned that spending will rise this year as it bets big on new content, even as revenue growth is expected to cool. At the same time, Netflix is pushing ahead with its bid for Warner Brothers Discovery Studios and streaming assets. This week, the company amended its offer to all cash, a move that could speed up shareholder approval and strengthen Netflix's hand as Paramount presses a rival bid. Warner shareholders could vote on the Netflix deal as soon as April. And speaking of big builds, Lego is going all in on dogs. The toy maker, known for its iconic building bricks, is unveiling a golden retriever puppy, and it comes with more than 2,000 pieces. The set stands nearly a foot tall and sells for about $140. Pre-orders are open now with shipments starting in February. And guys, I mean, look at these pictures, this video, a very positive start to the morning, I'd say, no pun intended.
Oh, well played. And, you know, to my children who might be watching, Mom's birthday's coming up. Let's get that pre-order. I love a good golden retriever.
Thanks,
Allie. Nice to see
I'm
you.
imagining you doing a Lego set, and it's funny to me.
I like the architecture ones.
Yeah.
They're like soothing. It's like Zen. Xanax.
I can see that.
Coming up on Morning News Now, he went from Olympic athlete to successful artist.
Again, everyone talks about sport and art being, two universal languages, but no one's managed to combine them together. And now I can see why, but I think the reason why is because they're so alike.
When we come back, we will introduce you to a former Olympian who traded in a paintbrush. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
And finally, this hour, we want to introduce you to a former Olympic athlete who is now more focused on the art of the games.
Reporter Cheryl Preheim from our affiliate station in Atlanta reveals how his masterpieces are reviving a tradition rooted in the earliest days of the Olympic Games.
My paintings, it's me. When you put them in a room, that's what it's like inside my head. It almost kind of agitates the eye, kind of keeps the eye moving around, the surface.
In his studio, Roald Bradstock creates art that pulses with energy, layers of shapes, lines, and Olympic imagery.
If we lost any pieces, this would be incomplete.
The two-time Olympian first made his mark with the Games throwing javelin. Now his hands grasp brushes to create history.
I always struggled with the sport-art connection. I was an athlete and an artist. I didn't see the connection until I moved here.
Bradstock moved to Atlanta in 1996 when the city welcomed the world for the Summer Olympics. That's when he uncovered a lost Olympic tradition.
We actually had competitions in painting, sculpture, literature, architecture.
Art competitions were dropped in 1948. But in 2018 in Pyeongchang, South Korea, Bradstock brought them back in his own way, leading the Olympic art program, inviting Olympians and guests outside the athlete village to be part of the process.
Phenomenal. I mean, we end up having 112 contributing to it, including President Bach, Prince Albert. So it's great to be, to lead that, to really kind of revive this whole idea about promoting, the arts and creativity within the Olympics.
He calls the genre Olympism art and invites the world to join the canvas.
Normally when you go to a museum or gallery, don't touch the work. And what I want to do is something completely opposite, is not only you can touch it, you're actually going to add to it.
The Olympic Picasso, turning viewers into creators and merging muscle into muse to share the spirit of the games.
Again, everyone talks about sport and art being, two universal languages, but no one's managed to combine them together. And now I can see why, but I think the reason why is because they're so alike. I didn't see it. I was both an athlete and artist for, it wasn't until I was almost 40 before I saw the connection. And now it just seems so obvious. So now my mission as an athlete is to really help people with programs and with my artwork see that connection.
Okay, how cool is that?
I know. Our thanks to Cheryl Preheim for that report.
Don't forget, coverage of the Winter Olympics begins with the opening ceremony on February 6th. You can watch it live on NBC and streaming on Peacock.
That does it for this hour of Morning News Now.
Don't go anywhere, though. The news continues right now. Good morning. Thanks so much for starting your Wednesday with us. I'm Savannah Sellers. Look who's here.
I'm Christine Romans in for Joe this morning. Right now on Morning News Now, pomp and pressure. President Trump touching down in Davos, Switzerland for the elite World Economic Forum, where he'll come face to face with the very same European leaders he is threatening with a slew of new tariffs if a deal for the U.S. to acquire Greenland isn't reached by February 1st. The EU now weighing retaliatory measures. And the shockwaves from it are all being felt here at home. Major markets plummeting over yesterday's whirlwind trading session over reignited fears of a broader U.S. trade war with European allies. I'll break down what it all means for your bottom line. Plus, why Fed Chair Jerome Powell is expected to show his face at the Supreme Court later today. Also this morning, bundle up. It's another brutally cold start for tens of millions of Americans across the Northeast and Midwest. The frigid temps actually forcing a temporary ground stop at Chicago's O'Hare International after a pipe burst in the air traffic control tower. And if you can believe it, the worst is still yet to come, what Mother Nature could have in store for your weekend. And if you're feeling like all that stale winter air inside your home is in dire need of a refresh, why not take advantage of Mother Nature's cold snap with the hot new trend? Okay, some are calling it house burping. We'll explain later in the hour.
I just heard that for the first time this weekend.
I know, it makes sense. Okay, we're going to explore that in a second. But we begin this hour in Switzerland, where President Trump is soon set to deliver his address to the global elite at the World Economic Forum in Davos.
That's right. The president landed in Zurich earlier this morning, but this followed a delay on his flight due to an electrical fault on Air Force One. Now, the trip puts the president on a collision course with European and NATO leaders who have been pushing back against his desire to seize Greenland. That is, of course, the Arctic island that is a part of Denmark. NBC News Chief White House correspondent Peter Alexander is there in Davos with the very latest. Peter, good morning.
Good morning to you. The president is now on the ground here safely after that overnight issue with Air Force One. And here in Davos, this is setting up to be a critical and dramatic moment in history, with America's allies delivering sharp rebukes of the president and declaring the global order as we know it is dead, insisting the NATO alliance, long thought to be unbreakable, is now at risk of blowing up. This morning, President Trump in Switzerland after his trip to Davos was delayed by a problem on board Air Force One. Shortly after it took off from Joint Base Andrews late Tuesday, the White House says the crew identified a minor electrical issue, turning the plane around as a precaution.
Air Force One, do you need any assistance? And I do have the route to Andrews when you're ready. Air Force One, clear direct to Andrews.
Back at Joint Base Andrews, the president changing to a smaller plane. His visit to Davos and the elite World Economic Forum comes as tensions between the U.S. and its European allies are at their highest point in decades. The latest rift over his repeated warnings the U.S. wants to take control of Greenland.
How far are you willing to go to acquire Greenland?
You'll find out.
President Trump threatening new tariffs on Denmark and 7 other NATO allies if no deal is reached by February 1st. Europe now threatening to retaliate in ways that could impact Americans' bottom line. Some European leaders urging they take a dramatic move using the so-called trade bazooka that could block American goods from being sold to Europe. President Trump responding overnight.
So I don't think they really know what a bazooka means. All I have to do is meet it, and it's going to go ricocheting backward.
The rhetoric here already heated. French President Emmanuel Macron warning the U.S. is looking to weaken Europe, drawing this conclusion.
But we do prefer respect to bullies. We do prefer rule of law to brutality.
While a lawmaker in Denmark, which has controlled Greenland for more than 300 years, delivered this profane message.
Let me put this in words you might understand. Mr. President, off.
But the president is shrugging off the criticism from Europe, and in a winding, at times rambling news conference Tuesday, projecting optimism that an agreement will be reached.
They get a little bit rough when they're, when I'm not around, but when I'm around, they treat me very nicely.
White House officials say that the president arrives here feeling emboldened on the heels of that operation that captured Venezuela's authoritarian leader Nicolas Maduro. But much like the temperature here on the ground, the president is likely to get a frigid reception. California's Governor Gavin Newsom speaking to us just moments ago, telling me, among other things, the president has lit this place on fire, adding his recklessness is incalculable. Back to you.
All right, Peter, thank you so much. And as we just heard there in Peter's piece, President Trump had to fly to Switzerland in a replacement plane following that issue on Air Force One. Well, last hour I spoke with NBC News aviation analyst Jeff Guzzetti. I started by asking what kind of issue on Air Force One might cause just that, for it to have to turn around. Here's some of our conversation.
There could be a myriad of things, right? So this is a 35-year-old aircraft, over 35 years old, this 747, and it's heavily modified for electrical equipment, for avionics, for communication devices, security equipment. So it needs a lot of energy to power that equipment, and the 4 engines on the 747 have generators. So perhaps a generator came offline, perhaps there was an electrical bus that failed. I don't think the president and his team were in danger. I just think they were inconvenienced. Again, an older airplane with a lot of electrical equipment, and something minor occurred.
What kinds of technical issues can present themselves with an airplane of that age?
Well, so the wiring is old, and so you might get chafing in the wiring, and a piece of equipment might short out. And you've got, even though that this is the president's plane, they really wanted, some of the stuff has to be low tech so it can't be hacked. So you just might be dealing with older type of analog electrical equipment, and they can be persnippety at times. And I think this was this occurred a little less than an hour right after takeoff, and out of an abundance of caution, they decided just to turn back around and then use the newer 757, which is typically Air Force Two for the vice president. Well, it became Air Force One when Trump and his staff moved over to that aircraft.
All right. Well, as we await President Trump's Davos speech, let's return to NBC's Ellison Barber in Greenland for more on the situation there on the ground. Ellison, thanks very much for being back with us. Super helpful to have you there and be able to report on what you're seeing. How are political leaders feeling right now about President Trump's his determination, really, to seize Greenland, especially since he is refusing to rule out military action?
They are not happy, and all eyes will certainly be on President Trump and his speech at Davos today. But yesterday we heard from the Prime Minister of Greenland, where he told Greenlanders that while they think a U.S. military invasion is unlikely, he said they cannot rule it out, and as a result, they need to be prepared, saying that other territorial officials are now working on updating and drafting civil preparedness guidelines for people in the event something like that were to take place, telling them things like you need to be prepared if we say so, that you need to have extra food, at least 5 days worth stored, and updating different guidelines like that in case they need it. Obviously, they're hoping that doesn't happen, but given the persistence, there's a lot of tension here and also a lot of fear among officials as well as people who live in Greenland about what could come in the days and weeks ahead. Savannah.
What have you been hearing from people in Greenland about this escalation in tensions?
Hey, Christine, yeah, it's a great question. I mean, people aren't just frustrated at this point. They're angry. And a lot of people, if you mention President Trump or the United States, you see it on their faces. You hear it in the language they use. There's a lot of animosity and, frankly, disdain for both President Trump and the U.S. Take a listen.
He must understand this, because no is no.
We Greenlander, we don't want to be Americans. We really live in danger because we don't know what it can happen with Greenland, because we can be bombed like Venezuela have been bombed.
And people aren't used to this sort of thing happening here, right? Less than 60,000 people live in Greenland. We're in the capital city where you have between 26 and 27,000 people. But even here, there's only about 9 miles worth of roads. The towns, they aren't connected even by roads like you would expect in other countries, right? It's so isolated here that a lot of these communities, some of them less than 1,000 people, are incredibly tight-knit. In order to get from one town to another, you have to take a boat or you have to take a helicopter or a plane because roads between them don't even exist. People are used to living this quiet life among nature, and now with all of this tension, this global focus, it's left a lot of people feeling uncertain, uncomfortable. But the biggest thing you'll hear from people again and again, Christine and Savannah, is just absolute anger and shock that that they are confused and surprised that in their view President Trump doesn't understand no means no here.
All right, thanks so much, Ellison Barber, there for us in Greenland.
Well, as the president gets ready to speak at the World Economic Forum, there are massive concerns of a trade war with the EU, and the stock market is plunging. The S&P 500 dropped more than 2% yesterday. That is its worst day since October. The president has repeatedly threatened to take over Greenland, as we've been discussing. And also, if that doesn't happen, impose a new 10% tariff. This is on our EU trading partners. Now, Christina's going to break this all down for us. We're lucky that we've got her by my side today. So, Christine, just walk us through how this potential trade war with Europe. Again, so we have the president saying, if you don't let me buy this by February 1st, I'm imposing these new tariffs. The expectation is the EU may retaliate. We have a trade war. Again, how's this spooking markets?
The president is threatening 10% tariffs to be ramped up to 25% tariffs. That's how the market's responding. When you see a 2% decline in the S&P 500, that is a big one-day move. So now the S&P is now negative for the year after hitting all these record highs. And what's interesting about this, I think, Savannah, is that they were calling it the Sell America trade. Usually when there's something, unstable around the world, people flood into U.S. bonds, the U.S. dollar. Okay. That didn't happen. Investors sold U.S. stocks. They sold bonds, which meant that interest rates rose, which raises costs for consumers and for companies and for governments. And they sold the dollar. And they sold crypto, too. Sold anything that could be painted with a brush of being an American asset. So that was what was a little bit troubling about yesterday. We'll see if the market can stabilize today. But it all depends on what happens here, what the president says, and then what European leaders say. The EU and the U.S. had hashed out a hard-won trade agreement, was on the verge of being ratified by the European Parliament, and now big question if it gets done.
Absolutely. There's been so much conversation. We've talked about it a million times with you, Christine, when does the consumer feel this? In which ways do they feel this? On which items? We now have the CEO of Amazon, hello, massive, one of the world's largest retailers, confirming that these tariffs have started to creep into some of the prices. How is this feeling for businesses and consumers?
So from the very beginning, experts had told me that you won't feel tariffs overnight. You'll feel them up to 18 months later. So think this all started in April. So now we're not even a year into this. And Andy Jassy, the CEO of Amazon, saying that a lot of companies had preloaded their inventory before the tariffs hit. Now they've worked through a lot of that inventory, and you're starting to see higher prices creep in. Not on everything. In some cases, companies are absorbing it. They're finding new ways. But creeping in. And so the concern is that you will see consumer prices continue to rise here. And the threat of new tariffs and the easy threat of new tariffs, 200% on wine and on champagne from France, and these kind of threats the president is throwing out, concern that the retaliation from Europe would raise costs for Americans who are making things and sending them to Europe as well. So there's a lot going on here.
I do want to switch gears and ask you something that we've got going on today. Big news, sort of this convergence between the Supreme Court and the Fed. What is happening today?
So the Federal Reserve Chair is going to go to the Supreme Court and hear these arguments where the Supreme Court is hearing arguments about Lisa Cook, who is a Fed governor. The president has tried to fire her over alleged mortgage fraud that has not been proven. The Fed chief has been very careful until recently to stay out of the White House attacks against the Federal Reserve and its members. But now a new tack. The Fed chief is going to be there. There will be a team from the Fed, we're told there, that will stay there, will be there to hear these arguments, which I think is quite symbolic. The optics of it are the Federal Reserve is standing up to the White House. So a remarkable moment. We've never seen anything like it.
Well, certainly will be, in big news out of the Supreme Court today. Yeah. Christine, thanks so much.
You're welcome. Right now to a major escalation in the battle over the ongoing ICE raids. In Minnesota, the Justice Department issued grand jury subpoenas to several top Democrats in that state on Tuesday, including Governor Tim Walz and Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Fry. It comes as a top member of the administration is set to visit Minneapolis. NBC News correspondent Maggie Vespa is in Minneapolis with the latest. Maggie, good morning.
Hey there, good morning. Yeah, new overnight, a source familiar with the plans confirming to NBC News that Vice President J.D. Vance is traveling here to visit Minneapolis tomorrow. This as those top Democrats who received those stunning subpoenas speak out. This morning, amid ongoing anti-ICE protests in Minnesota, Democrats hit with subpoenas by the Justice Department, firing back. Governor Tim Walz blasting the baseless legal tactics, calling the DOJ's investigation into whether he impeded federal officers political theater. Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Fry posting, "Every American should be concerned." This, as a source familiar with the plans, confirms Vice President J.D. Vance will visit the embattled city tomorrow for remarks and a roundtable discussion with leaders and community members. Today marks 2 weeks since an ICE officer fatally shot Renee Good, who the Trump administration has argued weaponized her vehicle. Tuesday, the president saying this about ICE.
Sometimes ICE is going to be too rough with somebody, or, they're dealing with rough people. They're going to make a mistake. Sometimes it can happen. We feel terribly. I felt horribly when I was told that the young woman who had the tragedy, it's a tragedy, it's a horrible thing.
Though overall, President Trump defending the agency, touting 3,000 arrests in recent weeks of undocumented immigrants he says were convicted of violent crimes. In Minneapolis, ICE and Border Patrol leaders asked about officers detaining U.S. citizens.
I would say that those tactics are born of necessity.
This after a local police chief says ICE stopped an off-duty female officer of color.
They demanded her paperwork, of which she's a U.S. citizen and clearly would not have any paperwork. The officer had their guns drawn during this interaction.
And this video going viral of 57-year-old U.S. citizen Chong Lee Scott Tao being arrested at his St. Paul home Sunday, let out in shorts in freezing conditions. DHS saying they were looking for convicted sex offenders at the home, saying Tao matched the description. Tao's family says none live at that address, and an NBC News review found he has no criminal record. Now, DHS just responding to our inquiries specifically about the incident the police chief described, telling us they have no record of it and that they are looking into it. For what it's worth, the chief went on to say that that incident only ended when the ICE officers were told the woman they had stopped was a police officer. Christine?
All right, Maggie, thank you.
Well, longtime Hollywood star Timothy Busfield is no longer behind bars this morning. A judge authorized his release during a detention hearing yesterday, saying Busfield had no criminal history. Well, the actor is awaiting trial on child sex abuse charges, which he denies. He is due in court again next week. NBC News correspondent Dana Griffin is live in Albuquerque, New Mexico with the latest. Dana, good morning.
Savannah, good morning to you. That hearing lasting more than 2 hours yesterday. The prosecution saying that Busfield could be a danger to the community if released, but the defense pushing back, saying that all of the allegations are fabricated and that he is innocent. Busfield's wife, actress Melissa Gilbert, visibly emotional inside that courtroom. 1 week after turning himself into authorities in Albuquerque, New Mexico, actor Timothy Busfield has been released from jail as he awaits trial. The actor appeared in court Tuesday facing charges of child abuse and criminal sexual contact of a minor. Prosecutors urging the judge to keep Busfield behind bars.
The state is requesting that this court find the defendant dangerous and that there are no conditions of release that this court can impose to secure the safety of this community.
According to a criminal complaint, the parents of 2 boys who appeared alongside Busfield on the TV series The Cleaning Lady say the actor and director inappropriately touched their children on multiple occasions on set, allegations Busfield denies.
Film sets may seem chaotic if you're an outsider, but everything we do is incredibly regimented.
The defense calling the lead director of photography Busfield worked with on The Cleaning Lady as a witness to discuss if inappropriate touching could have taken place.
At minimum of 10 people there on the set with them. It's just how it works.
In court documents, Busfield's defense team accused the parents of a revenge plot, making up allegations for a financial and retaliatory motive because the kids were recast from the show in 2024.
They represented the truth in the most extraordinary way.
The actor is best known for his roles in The West Wing and the movie Field of Dreams. Busfield's wife, actress Melissa Gilbert, emotional in court after submitting a letter of support that said in part her husband has the strongest moral compass of any human I have ever known.
The defense went all out for this, and it's only a detention hearing. We've heard evidence that some of the complainants may not be as credible as originally were thought, and that an investigation may have essentially exonerated Busfield some time ago when conducted by a private company.
Now, that Warner Brothers investigation was conducted independently once these allegations first surfaced, and the firm found no corroborating evidence that Busfield did anything inappropriately. But in court yesterday, prosecutors say that that firm never interviewed the key witnesses. Now that he is out of jail per the judge's orders, Busfield can travel, but he is not allowed to own weapons, contact witnesses, or any of the alleged victims. Savannah?
All right, Dana, thank you.
All right, turning now to this January freeze, the brutal winter weather tightening its grip on the U.S. this morning. More snow and dangerously cold conditions are icing over parts of the country, and now an even worse Arctic blast is coming this weekend, threatening to hit the south with ice and snow. NBC News correspondent Aaron McLaughlin is following it all for us this morning. Aaron, good morning.
Hey there, temps are hovering around 17 degrees here in New York. The harsh conditions leading to a slew of emergencies across the country, from rising hospitalizations to rescue missions. And while conditions may ease briefly today, another major storm is taking shape, set to drive even colder, potentially record-breaking lows. This morning, a brutal winter wallop not letting up.
You definitely need layers when you come outside.
Parts of western New York buried in more than 2 feet of lake-effect snow. The roads so treacherous near Buffalo. Some drivers like Joe Chanelli forced to spend Monday night at a rest stop after getting snowed in.
We just watched the snow come down. Everyone was taking it pretty well.
In the Midwest, firefighters battled a major blaze in sub-zero temps. Despite the harsh conditions, they managed to rescue 2 adults and a child. Meanwhile, large chunks of ice blocked a water intake pipe at a treatment plant in Pittsburgh, affecting water pressure in the city. Emergency crews used a barge and a tugboat to clear the Allegheny River. And at Chicago's O'Hare Airport,
we're not able to provide air traffic control services.
Control tower workers forced to evacuate after a pipe burst in the bitter cold, leading to a temporary ground stop. Hospitals nationwide also feeling the freeze. In Michigan, health officials say emergency room visits for cold-related illness are up 50% this week.
In this Arctic punch, and seconds count. So you really have to take precautions.
But some enjoying the wintry blast, including snow leopards and bison at the zoo. Experts are urging caution against going outside for extended periods of time. But if necessary, look out for signs of frostbite, which can include numbness and pale skin. Hypothermia is also something to watch for. Those signs include extreme shivering, confusion, and drowsiness. Back to you.
All right, Aaron, thank you for that.
Well, for more on this incoming winter blast, let's bring in meteorologist Andrea Romero.
Andrea, good morning.
Good morning. And all eyes are on that major storm that's going to be developing also later on this week. We have this Pacific low that's going to be moving in Thursday and Friday, bringing in that Pacific moisture into the plains. We also expect some of that Gulf moisture to feed into this storm. And of course, that tropical air mass is going to be clashing with that Arctic air, and that's the perfect recipe for that high impact winter storm that we're expecting to begin probably Friday with some snow and ice beginning in the afternoon hours. We can see that rain here close to El Paso, and then that snow extending into Amarillo, into Wichita, Kansas. We have that ice also over here, parts of Texas into Oklahoma. Treacherous travel after sunset, and of course that storm will continue to move east with a crippling ice storm extending from Texas all the way into the Carolinas on Saturday. Heavy snow north of that extending from parts of New Mexico, also Texas, Oklahoma, into the mid-Atlantic, into parts of Virginia. And of course, then on Sunday, that heavy snow will be moving into the northeast with an increasing chance of high accumulations. So we can see the snowfall forecast is going to be probably over a foot of snow in some areas in Arkansas and in Oklahoma. And we also have that ice accumulation that will be crippling areas. We are expecting major power outages with the storm. And then as far as the heavy snow amounts over in the northeast, that's when we're still looking at the models. It seems like they're coming into agreement, and we might get possibility of over a foot of snow in some areas, especially perhaps even in New York City, we can get a foot of snow. So we already have over 49 million people under winter weather alerts for this system, stretching from the central plains into the Tennessee Valley. And of course, we are still dealing with some lake effect snow today as well that will be moving into the northeast. So it's all these rounds of winter weather that continue to impact our parts of our area in the Great Lakes. We have The highest totals expected downwind of Lake Ontario. Snowfall amounts that could be 2 feet still falling in the Tug Hill Plateau, and also along that area, we're expecting possibility of over a foot of snow. But we do get that brief relief of the cold today, so we'll enjoy that before that Arctic blast will be moving in later this week into the weekend.
I can't put the shovels away. Keep them leaning against the side door, ready to go. Andrew, thank you.
All right, thanks. Much more to come on this hour of Morning News Now, including the fiery new text messages between Blake Lively and Taylor Swift that are now part of that ongoing legal tussle involving Lively and It Ends With Us director and her co-star, Justin Baldoni.
But first, after the break, Prince Harry taking the stand today in a London court in his latest legal fight against Britain's tabloids. The latest next.
Welcome back. Prince Harry is facing Britain's tabloids in court today, testifying in his privacy case. He and other high-profile plaintiffs accuse the Daily Mail's publisher of illegally obtaining private information. Those allegations the company denies. NBC News International correspondent Molly Hunter is outside the courthouse in London with the latest for us. Hey, Molly, good morning.
Savannah, good morning to you. That's right. This is day 3. It's a big day. Prince Harry is inside the courthouse just behind me on the witness stand giving testimony and fielding some pretty tough questions about very intimate details about his personal life. Now, he was directly asked why he didn't complain about some of these articles that are in the case at the time. Some of these are historical examples dating back 10, 20, even 30 years. And he repeated the royal family's policy of never complain, never explain. Take a look.
This morning, Prince Harry is back in court and taking the witness stand, giving evidence on his latest lawsuit against the British tabloids. This time, Harry taking on Associated Newspapers Limited, ANL, the publishers of the Daily Mail and Mail on Sunday, for unlawful information gathering. Joining the claimant side, actress Elizabeth Hurley, singer Elton John, and his husband David Furnish, among others. They're accusing ANL of going to great lengths to obtain information, including impersonating people to get medical records, hacking phones, planting listening devices, some of the complaints dating back 3 decades. The first 2 days of court heard opening statements from both sides, the defense vehemently denying any wrongdoing, arguing the tabloid journalists provide a compelling account of a pattern of legitimate sourcing of articles, adding in a written statement that Harry and the other celebrities have leaky social circles. But when it comes to the Duke of Sussex, there are 14 articles specifically in question, mostly about his young dating life, but also about his mother. Articles his lawyer described as highly intrusive and damaging.
What we've heard from Harry's lawyers is a very emotive account of the impact that these events had on his life. You know, they made him incredibly paranoid and distrusting of those around him, but also fearing for his security in some events.
But for Harry, this is also about his mother.
There is evidence to suggest that she was being hacked in the mid-90s, probably one of the first people to be hacked. And yet, still today, the press, the tabloid press, very much enjoy painting her as being paranoid. But she wasn't paranoid. She was absolutely right of what was happening to her. And she's not around today to find out the truth.
But elsewhere in the UK this week, worlds apart, William and Kate carrying on royal business as usual. Up in Scotland, stopping by a village pub. Back in London, no sign that the brothers or even Harry and his father will make time to see each other. As the legal fight continues, so does the family rift.
Now, his lawyer has said this, and this is actually in Harry's written witness statement, but he says he is doing this out of public interest. He sees this as an important, personal, public duty, that kind of role that he can really play. And he's doing this, Savannah, not out of self-preservation, not for some big settlement or big payout, but because he wants to uncover the truth. Savannah?
All right, Molly, thank you very much.
The ongoing legal battle between Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni is taking a new turn this morning.
Yeah, newly released court documents reveal never-before-seen testimony and text messages from stars like Taylor Swift and It Ends With Us co-star Jenny Slate. NBC News senior national correspondent Stephanie Gosk is here with the latest on this one. Steph, good morning.
Hi, guys. Good morning to you. This Hollywood feud has been brewing for over a year, and it's not showing any signs of slowing down. These new allegations in the files shed more light on the embattled cast while also painting a picture of a chaotic movie set.
This morning, music superstar Taylor Swift caught in the crossfire of the contentious legal battle between Blake Lively and her co-star and It Ends With Us director Justin Baldoni. The judge overseeing the case that's set to begin in May, unsealing hundreds of pages of documents ahead of a hearing this week, including texts between Swift and Lively.
The Taylor Swift and Blake Lively text messages are finally here.
Like one ahead of a 2024 New York Times article that reported Baldoni had been waging a smear campaign against Lively. Swift writing, "I think this expletive knows something is coming because he's gotten out his tiny violin." It's all part of a $160 million civil suit Lively has filed against Baldoni, accusing him of sexual harassment on set. And in the documents outlining allegations that Baldoni commented on Lively's body and made her uncomfortable during filming. Lively also accusing him of engaging in a social manipulation campaign to destroy her reputation, accusations that Baldoni and his legal team have repeatedly denied.
Was there a coordinated smear campaign to bring down Blake Lively?
100% no.
The documents also showing that Lively asked Swift for help in 2023 during the filming of the movie. In one exchange, Lively referring to Baldoni as a doofus director who thinks he's a writer, asking Swift to endorse a revised script, with Swift responding with a text, "I'll do anything for you." Lively, who is married to actor Ryan Reynolds, later telling Swift, "You were so epically heroic today. I recapped every moment to Ryan. You are the world's absolute greatest friend ever."
Oh, that's my brother Ryle.
The over 300-page court filing revealing additional messages, including texts from actress Jenny Slate, who plays Baldoni's sister in the film, calling him a false ally and a fraud, and saying the shoot was, quote, gross and disturbing. Texts between Baldoni and another actor show he was equally frustrated during filming, writing in one message, "If Lively doesn't promote the movie, she can leak that I'm a bad person or that she felt unsafe with me."
In a statement to NBC News, a member of Blake Lively's legal team says all of these never-before-seen texts, eyewitness accounts, and testimony back up her claims. We also reached out to Justin Baldoni, who had no comment. His own documents have yet to be released. A hearing to throw out Lively's claims is set for Thursday. Otherwise, this is still set to go to trial, guys, in May.
A Hollywood drama playing out right in front of our eyes. All right, thanks, Steph.
Well, coming up is another government shutdown threat right around the corner.
When Morning News Now returns, what's inside a new bipartisan funding bill introduced on Capitol Hill just days before that January 30th deadline. That's up next.
Welcome back. Just moments from now, President Trump is expected to take the stage at the World Economic Forum in Davos. In fact, he is being introduced as we speak. We are going to bring that speech to you live. Before we do, we want to bring in NBC News senior White House correspondent Gabe Gutierrez. Gabe, this is a big moment, right, because of the backdrop here, mainly this conversation surrounding Greenland and the president's total commitment, as he says, to making Greenland a part of the United States. He's going to be right there in front of NATO allies. It's, of course, a Danish territory. Denmark says it is not for sale. Greenland says it is not for sale. And we anticipate that's a big focus of this conversation. I believe the president's coming to the stage, but just tell us quickly what you're expecting.
Well, certainly, Savannah, White House officials say the president feels emboldened here. We expect this to be a speech about, quote, America first. And this all comes amid these escalating tensions that we've heard over the last several days between President Trump and world leaders. Certainly the president looking to take several meetings over the next 2 days. But as we wait for him to take the stage, this is going to be a speech that's going to be watched around the world, Savannah.
Thank you very much, Larry. Thank you, Gabe. Let's listen in.
To be back in beautiful Davos, Switzerland, and to address so many respected business leaders, so many friends, few enemies, and all of the distinguished guests. It's a who's who, I will say that. I've come to this year's World Economic Forum with truly phenomenal news from America. Yesterday marked the one-year anniversary of my inauguration, and today, after 12 months back in the White House, our economy is booming, growth is exploding, productivity is surging, investment is soaring, incomes are rising, inflation has been defeated, our previously open and dangerous border is closed, and virtually impenetrable. And the United States is in the midst of the fastest and most dramatic economic turnaround in our country's history. Under the Biden administration, America was plagued by the nightmare of stagflation, meaning low growth, and high inflation, a recipe for misery, failure, and decline. But now, after just 1 year of my policies, we are witnessing the exact opposite: virtually no inflation and extraordinarily high economic growth. Growth like, I believe, you'll see very shortly, our country has never seen before, perhaps no country has ever seen before. Over the past 3 months, core inflation has been just 1.6%. Meanwhile, fourth quarter growth is projected to be 5.4%, far greater than anybody other than myself and a few others had predicted. Since the election, the stock market has set 52 all-time high records. So that's in 1 year, 52 records, adding $9 trillion in value to retirement accounts, 401ks, and people's savings. People are doing very well. They're very happy with me. Since my inauguration, we've lifted more than 1.2 million people off of food stamps, and after 4 years in which Biden secured less than $1 trillion of new investment in our country. Think of that, $1 trillion, substantially less than that. In 4 years, we've secured commitments for a record-breaking $18 trillion, and we think when the final numbers come out, they'll be closer to $20 trillion of investment. That's never been done by any country at any time, not even close. Just over 1 year ago, under the radical left Democrats, we were a dead country. Now we are the hottest country anywhere in the world. In fact, the United States economy is on pace to grow at double the rate that was projected by the IMF just last April. And with my growth and tariff policies, it should be much higher. I really believe we can be much higher than that. And this is all great news, and it's great for all nations. The USA is the economic engine on the planet, and when America booms, the entire world booms. It's been the history. When it goes bad, it goes bad. You all follow us down, and you follow us up, and we're at a point that I don't believe we've ever been. I never thought we could do it this quickly. My biggest surprise is I thought it would take more than a year, maybe like a year and 1 month. But it's happened very quickly. This afternoon, I want to discuss how we have achieved this economic miracle, how we intend to raise living standards for our citizens to levels never seen before, and perhaps how you too and the places where you come from can do much better by following what we're doing, because certain places in Europe are not even recognizable, frankly, anymore. They're not recognizable. And we can argue about it, but there's no argument. Friends come back from different places. I don't want to insult anybody and say I don't recognize it. And that's not in a positive way. That's in a very negative way. And I love Europe, and I want to see Europe go good. But it's not heading in the right direction. In recent decades, it became conventional wisdom in Washington and European capitals that the only way to grow a modern Western economy was through ever-increasing government spending, unchecked mass migration, and endless foreign imports. The consensus was that so-called dirty jobs and heavy industry should be sent elsewhere, that affordable energy should be replaced by the Green New Scam, and that countries could be propped up by importing new and entirely different populations from faraway lands. This was the path that Sleepy Joe Biden administration and many other Western governments very foolishly followed, turning their backs on everything that makes nations rich and powerful and strong. And there's so much potential in so many nations. The result was record budget and trade deficits and a growing sovereign deficit driven by the largest wave of mass migration in human history. We've never seen anything like it. Quite frankly, many parts of our world are being destroyed before our very eyes, and the leaders don't even understand what's happening. and the ones that do understand aren't doing anything about it. Virtually all of the so-called experts predicted my plans to end this failed model would trigger a global recession and runaway inflation. But we have proven them wrong. It's actually just the opposite. In 1 year, our agenda has produced a transformation like America has not seen in over 100 years. Instead of closing down energy plants, we're opening them up. Instead of building ineffective, money-losing windmills, we're taking them down and not approving any. Instead of empowering bureaucrats, we're firing them, and they're going out and getting jobs in the private sector for 2 and 3 times what they were making in government. So they started off hating me when we fired them, and now they love me. Instead of raising taxes on domestic producers, we're lowering them and raising tariffs on foreign nations to pay for the damage that they've caused. In 12 months, we have removed over 270,000 bureaucrats from the federal payrolls, the largest single-year reduction in government employment since the end of World War II. Nobody thought that was coming, but we had no choice. To make a country great, you can't have all federal jobs. We've cut federal spending by $100 billion and slashed the federal budget deficit by 27% in the single year. It's going to go down quite a bit more from that, driving inflation way down from the record highs of the Biden administration. Every month, they went up and up and up. I promised to cut 10 old regulations for every single new regulation, but instead I've cut, actually, till this point, 129 regulations for every 1 new regulation approved. So every time they come in with a new regulation, we do at least 10, but so far it's averaging out to 129, if you can believe it. In July, we passed the largest tax cuts in American history, including no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, no tax on Social Security for our great seniors. We also provided 100% expensing, that's the one they like, and bonus depreciation for all new equipment and capital investments to help companies expand and shift production to America. They are so in love with that. They build a plant, they're able to deduct it immediately, the whole thing, rather than waiting 38 to 41 years in the old days. This is a miracle taking place. Nobody thought it would ever be done by any country, but it's done by us. It was what made my first term the most successful 4-year term that we've ever had from a financial standpoint. And now we've upped it. This is a 10-year program, not a 1-year program. But you're allowed to deduct everything in 1 year. It used to be 38 to 41 years. With tariffs, we've radically reduced our ballooning trade deficit, which was the largest in world history. We were losing more than $1 trillion every single year, and it was just wasted. It was going to waste. But in 1 year, I slashed our monthly trade deficit by a staggering 77%, and all of this with no inflation, something everyone said could not be done. There were a couple of brilliant people that actually thought I was doing the right thing. I thought I was doing the right thing. Now they all think I'm doing the right thing because they can't believe the numbers. American exports are now up by more than $150 billion. Domestic steel production is up by 300,000 tons a month, and it's doubling over the next 4 months. It's doubling and tripling, and we have steel plants being built all over the country. Nobody thought they'd see that. Factory construction is up by 41%, and that number is really going to skyrocket right now because that's during a process that they're putting in to get their approvals, and we've given very, very quick, fast approvals. In the process, we've made historic trade deals with partners covering 40% of all U.S. trade. Some of the greatest companies and countries in the world. We have countries as our partner, too. The European nations, Japan, South Korea. They're our partners. They've gone into massive deals with us, especially on oil and gas. And these agreements raise growth and cause stock markets to boom, not only in the U.S., but virtually every country that came to make a deal, because as you've learned, when the United States goes up, you follow. It's really become a staple. In America, I've stopped the nation-wrecking energy policies that drive up prices while sending jobs and factories to the world's worst polluters. They are indeed polluters. Under sleepy Joe Biden, new domestic oil and gas leases fell by 95%. Think of that. Then they wonder, why was gasoline going up so fast? The gasoline actually topped $5 a gallon, and some places $7 a gallon, and more than 100 major power plants were violently shut down by incompetent people that had no idea what the hell they were doing. Under my leadership, U.S. natural gas production is at an all-time high by far. U.S. oil production is up by 730,000 barrels a day, and last week we picked up 50 million barrels from Venezuela alone. Venezuela has been an amazing place for so many years, but then they went bad with their policies. 20 years ago, it was a great country, and now it's got problems, but we're helping them. And those 50 million barrels, we're going to be splitting up with them, and they'll be making more money than they've made in a long time. Venezuela is going to do fantastically well. We appreciate all of the cooperation we've been giving. We've been giving great cooperation. Once the attack ended, and they said, let's make a deal. More people should do that. But Venezuela is going to make more money in the next 6 months than they've made in the last 20 years. Every major oil company is coming in with us. It's amazing. It's a beautiful thing to see. The leadership of the country has been very good. They've been very, very smart. The price of gasoline is now below $2.50 a gallon in many states, $2.30 a gallon in most states. Then we'll soon be averaging less than $2 a gallon. In many places, it's already down even lower, $1.95 a gallon. Numerous states are at $1.99, numbers that nobody has heard for years. Actually, since my last administration, we got it down to around those numbers. I've signed an order directing and approval of many new nuclear reactors. We're going heavy into nuclear. I was not a big fan because I didn't like the risk, the danger. But they have the progress they've made with nuclear is unbelievable, and the safety progress they've made is incredible. We're very much into the world of nuclear energy, and we can have it now at good prices and very, very safe. And we're leading the world in AI by a lot. We're leading China by a lot. I think President Xi respects what we've done, in part because I've allowed these big companies building these massive buildings to build their own electric capacity. They're building their own power plants, which when added up is more than any country anywhere in the world is doing. I read recently an article in the Wall Street Journal that China's creating so much energy, and they are. I got to hand it to them. But we're creating as much or more, and we're letting them do that. I'm very proud of it. It was my idea. I said, you can't create this much energy. We needed more than double the energy currently in the country just to take care of the AI plants. And I said, we can't do that. We have an old grid system. And I came up with the idea, you know, you people are brilliant. You have a lot of money. Let's see what you can do. You can build your own electric generating plants. And they looked at me. They didn't believe me. All of the names that are, I think, in the room right now, if you want to know the truth, they didn't believe it. And I said, no, you can't. They came back 2 weeks and they didn't have the plant. They said, we thought you were kidding. I said, no, not only am I not kidding, you're going to have your approvals within 2 weeks. I always say nuclear will take 3 weeks. But most aren't going that. They're going oil and gas. They're even going coal in some cases. Because of my landslide election victory, the United States avoided the catastrophic energy collapse which befell every European nation that pursued the Green New Scam, perhaps the greatest hoax in history. The Green New Scam, windmills all over the place, destroy your land, Every time that goes around, you lose $1,000. You're supposed to make money with energy, not lose money. Here in Europe, we've seen the fate that the radical left tried to impose on America. They tried very hard. Germany now generates 22% less electricity than it did in 2017. And it's not the current chancellor's fault. He's solving the problem. He's going to do a great job. But what they did before he got there, I guess that's why he got there. And electricity prices are 64% higher. The United Kingdom produces just 1/3 of the total energy from all sources that it did in 1999. Think of that, 1/3. And they're sitting on top of the North Sea, one of the greatest reserves anywhere in the world, but they don't use it. And that's one reason why their energy has reached catastrophically low levels with equally high prices. High prices, very low levels. Think of that, 1/3. And you're sitting on top of the North Sea, and they like to say, well, you know, that's depleted. It's not depleted. It's got 500 years. They haven't even found the oil. The North Sea is incredible. They don't let anybody drill. Environmentally, they don't let them drill. They make it impossible for the oil companies to go. They take 92% of the revenues. So the oil companies say, we can't do it. They came to see me. Is there anything you can do? I want Europe to do great. I want UK to do great. Sitting on one of the greatest energy sources in the world, and they don't use it. In fact, their electricity prices have soared 139%. There are windmills all over Europe. There are windmills all over the place, and they are losers. One thing I've noticed is that the more windmills a country has, the more money that country loses and the worse that country is doing. China makes almost all of the windmills, and yet I haven't been able to find any wind farms in China. Did you ever think of that? It's a good way of looking at it. They're smart. China's very smart. They make them, they sell them for a fortune. They sell them to the stupid people that buy them, but they don't use them themselves. They put up a couple of big wind farms, but they don't use them. They just put them up to show people what they could look like. They don't spin. They don't do anything. They use a thing called coal, mostly. But China goes with the coal. They go with oil and gas. They're starting to look at nuclear a little bit. And they're doing just fine. They make a fortune selling the windmills, though, and I think really that's one that they wouldn't be surprised if it stopped. They are shocked that it continues to go. They're very friendly with me. They're shocked that people continue to buy those damn things. They killed the birds. They ruin your landscapes. Other than that, I think they're fabulous, by the way. Stupid people buy them. The consequences of such destructive policies have been stark, including lower economic growth, lower standards of living, lower birth rates, more socially disruptive migration, more vulnerability to hostile foreign adversaries, and much, much smaller militaries. The United States cares greatly about the people of Europe. We really do. I mean, look, I am derived from Europe. Scotland and Germany, 100% Scotland, my mother, 100% German, my father. And we believe deeply in the bonds we share with Europe as a civilization. I want to see it do great. That's why issues like energy, trade, immigration, and economic growth must be central concerns to anyone who wants to see a strong and united West, because Europe and those countries have to do their thing. They have to get out of the culture that they've created over the last 10 years. It's horrible what they're doing to themselves. They're destroying themselves. It's beautiful, beautiful places. We want strong allies, not seriously weakened ones. We want Europe to be strong. Ultimately, these are matters of national security, and perhaps no current issue makes the situation more clear than what's currently going on with Greenland. Would you like me to say a few words of Greenland? I was going to leave it out of the speech, but I thought I think I would have been reviewed very negatively. I have tremendous respect for both the people of Greenland and the people of Denmark, tremendous respect. But every NATO ally has an obligation to be able to defend their own territory. And the fact is, no nation or group of nations is in any position to be able to secure Greenland other than the United States. We're a great power, much greater than people even understand. I think they found that out 2 weeks ago in Venezuela. We saw this in World War II, when Denmark fell to Germany after just 6 hours of fighting and was totally unable to defend either itself or Greenland. So the United States was then compelled, we did it, we felt an obligation to do it, to send our own forces to hold the Greenland territory, and hold it we did at great cost and expense. They didn't have a chance of getting on it, and they tried. Denmark knows that. We literally set up bases on Greenland for Denmark. We fought for Denmark. We weren't fighting for anyone else. We were fighting to save it for Denmark. Big, beautiful piece of ice. It's hard to call it land. It's a big piece of ice. But we saved Greenland and successfully prevented our enemies from gaining a foothold in our hemisphere. So we did it for ourselves also. And then after the war, which we won it big. Without us, right now you'd all be speaking German and a little Japanese, perhaps. After the war, we gave Greenland back to Denmark. How stupid were we to do that? But we did it. But we gave it back. But how ungrateful are they now? So now our country and the world face much greater risks than it did ever before because of missiles, because of nuclear, because of weapons of warfare that I can't even talk about. 2 weeks ago, they saw weapons that nobody ever heard of. They weren't able to fire one shot at us. They said, what happened? Everything was discombobulated. They said, we've got them in our sights. Press the trigger, and nothing happened. No anti-aircraft missiles went up. There was one that went up about 30 feet and crashed down right next to the people that sent it. They said, what the hell is going on? Those defensive systems were made by Russia and by China. So they're going to go back to the drawing boards, I guess. Greenland is a vast, almost entirely uninhabited and undeveloped territory that's sitting undefended in a key strategic location between the United States, Russia, and China. That's exactly where it is, right smack in the middle. Wasn't important nearly when we gave it back. You know, when we gave it back, it wasn't the same as it is now. It's not important for any other reason, you know, everyone talks about the minerals. There's so many places. There's no rare earth, no such thing as rare earth. There's rare processing, but there's so much rare earth. And this, to get to this rare earth, you got to go through hundreds of feet of ice. That's not the reason we need it. We need it for strategic national security and international security. This enormous unsecured island is actually part of North America, on the northern frontier of the Western Hemisphere. That's our territory. It is therefore a core national security interest of the United States of America. And in fact, it's been our policy for hundreds of years to prevent outside threats from entering our hemisphere, and we've done it very successfully. We've never been stronger than we are now. That's why American presidents have sought to purchase Greenland for nearly 2 centuries. You know, for 2 centuries they've been trying to do it. They should have kept it after World War II, but they had a different president. That's all right. People think differently. Much more necessary now than it was at that time, however. In 2019, Denmark said that they would spend over $200 million to strengthen Greenland's defenses. But as you know, they spent less than 1% of that amount. 1%. There's no sign of Denmark there. And I say that with great respect for Denmark, whose people I love, whose leaders are very good. It's the United States alone that can protect this giant mass of land, this giant piece of ice, develop it and improve it and make it so that it's good for Europe and safe for Europe and good for us. And that's the reason I'm seeking immediate negotiations to once again discuss the acquisition of Greenland by the United States, just as we have acquired many other territories throughout our history, as many of the European nations have. They've acquired. There's nothing wrong with it. Many of them, some went in reverse, actually, if you look. Some had great, vast wealth, great, vast lands all over the world. They went in reverse. They're stuck back where they started. That happens too. But some grow. But this would not be a threat to NATO. This would greatly enhance the security of the entire alliance, the NATO alliance. The United States is treated very unfairly by NATO. I want to tell you that. And when you think about it, nobody can dispute it. We give so much and we get so little in return. And I've been a critic of NATO for many years. And yet I've done more to help NATO than any other president by far, than any other person. You wouldn't have NATO if I didn't get involved in my first term. The war with Ukraine is an example. We are thousands of miles away, separated by a giant ocean. It's a war that should have never started, and it wouldn't have started if the 2020 U.S. presidential election weren't rigged. It was a rigged election. Everybody now knows that. They found out. People will soon be prosecuted for what they did. It's probably breaking news, but it should be. It was a rigged election. Can't have rigged elections. You need strong borders, strong elections, and ideally a good press. I always say it. Strong borders, strong elections, free, fair elections, and a fair media. The media is terrible. It's very crooked. It's very biased, terrible. But someday it'll straighten out because it's losing all credibility. Think of it. When I went in a landslide, a giant landslide, won all 7 swing states, won the popular vote, won everything, and I only get negative press. That means that it has no credibility. And if they're going to get credibility, they're going to have to be fair. So you need a fair press. But you also need those other elements. And I inherited a terrible, terrible situation. If you look, the border was open. The inflation was raging. Everything was bad with the United States when I came into office. But I also inherited a mess with Ukraine and Russia, something that would have never happened. And I know Putin very well. He and I would discuss Ukraine. It was the apple of his eye, but he wasn't going to do anything. I said, Vladimir, you're not doing it. He would never have done it. It was terrible what happened. I could see it happening, too. After I left, I could see it happening. Biden had given Ukraine and NATO $350 billion, a staggering sum, $350 billion. I came in, and just like the southern border, just like inflation, just like our economy, I said, wow, this place is in trouble, meaning our country. All of these things were out of control. But the border was out of control. We fixed it with the strongest border anywhere in the world. And I've now been working on this war for 1 year, during which time I settled 8 other wars. India, Pakistan. I settled other wars that were Vladimir Putin called me, Armenia, Azerbaijan. He said, I can't believe you settled that one. They were going on for 35 years. I settled it in 1 day. And President Putin called me. He said, you know, I can't believe I've worked on that war for 10 years trying to settle it. I couldn't do it. I said, do me a favor, focus on settling your war. Don't worry about that one. What does the United States get out of all of this work, all of this money, other than death, destruction, and massive amounts of cash going to people who don't appreciate what we do? They don't appreciate what we do. I'm talking about NATO. I'm talking about Europe. They have to work on Ukraine. We don't. The United States is very far away. We have a big, beautiful ocean separating us. We have nothing to do with it. Until I came along, NATO was only supposed to pay 2% of GDP. But they weren't paying. Most of the countries weren't paying anything. The United States was paying for virtually 100% of NATO. And I got that stopped. I said, that's not fair. But then more importantly, I got NATO to pay 5%, and now they were paying, and now they are paying. So something nobody said was possible. They said, we will never go up higher than 2%. But they went to 5%, and now they're paying the 5. They didn't pay the 2, and now they're paying the 5. And they're stronger for it, and they have an excellent, by the way, Secretary General, who's possibly in the room. Mark, are you here? Yes, he's here. Hello, Mark. We never asked for anything, and we never got anything. We probably won't get anything unless I decide to use excessive strength and force where we would be, frankly, unstoppable. But I won't do that. Okay? Now everyone's saying, oh, good. That's probably the biggest statement I made, because people thought I would use force. I don't have to use force. I don't want to use force. I won't use force. All the United States is asking for is a place called Greenland, where we already had it as a trustee, but respectfully returned it back to Denmark not long ago after we defeated the Germans, the Japanese, the Italians, and others in World War II. We gave it back to them. We were a powerful force then, but we are a much more powerful force now after I rebuilt the military in my first term and continue to do so today. We have a budget of $1.5 trillion. We're bringing back battleships. The battleship is 100 times more powerful than the great battleships you saw in World War II, those great, big, gorgeous ships, the Missouri, the Iowa, the Alabama. Because they thought maybe we could take them out of mothballs. They said, no, sir, these ships are 100, think of that, 100 times more powerful than those big, magnificent pieces of art that you saw so many times ago, that you still see on television. You say, wow, what a force. 100 times, each ship 100 times more powerful than the big battleships of the past. So that was the end of the mothball story. So what we have gotten out of NATO is nothing except to protect Europe from the Soviet Union and now Russia. I mean, we've helped them for so many years. We've never gotten anything, except we pay for NATO. And we paid for many years until I came along. We paid for, in my opinion, 100% of NATO because they weren't paying their bills. And all we're asking for is to get Greenland, including right title and ownership, because you need the ownership to defend it. You can't defend it on a lease. Number one, legally it's not defensible that way, totally. And number two, psychologically, who the hell wants to defend a license agreement or a lease, which is a large piece of ice in the middle of the ocean where if there is a war, much of the action will take place on that piece of ice. Think of it. Those missiles would be flying right over the center of that piece of ice. All we want from Denmark for national and international security and to keep our very energetic and dangerous potential enemies at bay is this land on which we're going to build the greatest Golden Dome ever built. We're building a Golden Dome that's going to, just by its very nature, going to be defending Canada. Canada gets a lot of freebies from us, by the way. They should be grateful also, but they're not. I watched your Prime Minister yesterday. He wasn't so grateful. But they should be grateful to us. Canada lives because of the United States. Remember that, Mark, the next time you make your statements. What we did for Israel was amazing, but that's nothing compared to what we have planned for the United States, Canada, and the rest of the world. We are going to build a dome like no other. We did it for Israel. And by the way, I told Bibi, stop taking credit for the dome. That's our technology. That's our stuff. But they had a lot of courage, and they were good fighters, and they did a good job, and we wiped out the Iran nuclear threat like nobody can believe. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. That, Venezuela, taking down Soleimani, wiping out al-Baghdadi when he tried to reinstitute ISIS. We did a lot. I did a lot of big things, all perfectly executed. Everyone was perfectly executed. Somebody told me that, a military expert told me, sir, everything you've done has been perfectly executed. I said, I know. So other presidents have spent, whether foolishly or not, trillions and trillions of dollars on NATO and gotten absolutely nothing in return. We've never asked for anything. It's always a one-way street. Now they want us to help them with Ukraine. And we say, we're going to. I'm really helping, not even them. I want to see, last week, if you saw, it was 10,000 soldiers, but last month it was 31,000 soldiers died. 31,000. That's this room times, the number of people in this room times 30. Think of it. 30,000 soldiers died in 1 month. The month before it was 27,000. The month before that it was 28,000. The month before that it was 25,000. It's a bloodbath over there. And that's what I want to stop. It doesn't help the United States, but these are souls. These are young people. Look like you, look like some of you right in the front row. They go to war. Their parents are so proud. Oh, there he goes, comes back. 2 weeks later, they get a call, your son's head's been blown off. I want to stop it. It's a horrible war. It's the worst since World War II. They keep going, they'll exceed World War II. The numbers are staggering, how many people they've lost. They don't want to talk about it. Ukraine and Russia lost just tremendous amounts. And I'm dealing with President Putin, and he wants to make a deal, I believe. I'm dealing with President Zelensky, and I think he wants to make a deal. I'm meeting him today. He might be in the audience right now. But they got to get that war stopped because too many people are dying, needlessly dying. Too many souls are being lost. It's the only reason I'm interested in doing it. But in doing it, I'm helping Europe, I'm helping NATO, and I've until the last few days when I told them about Iceland, they loved me. They called me daddy, right, last time. A very smart man said, he's our daddy. He's running it. I was like running it. I went from running it to being a terrible human being. But now what I'm asking for is a piece of ice, cold and poorly located, that can play a vital role in world peace and world protection. It's a very small ask compared to what we have given them for many, many decades. But the problem with NATO is that we'll be there for them 100%. But I'm not sure that they'd be there for us. If we gave them the call, gentlemen, we are being attacked. We're under attack by such and such a nation. I know them all very well. I'm not sure that they'd be there. I know we'd be there for them. I don't know that they'd be there for us. So with all of the money we expend, with all of the blood, sweat, and tears, I don't know that they'd be there for us. They're not there for us on Iceland, that I can tell you. I mean, our stock market took the first dip yesterday because of Iceland. So Iceland's already cost us a lot of money. But that dip is peanuts compared to what it's gone up. And we have an unbelievable future in that stock. That stock market is going to be doubled. We're going to hit 50,000, and that stock market's going to double in a relatively short period of time because of everything that's happening. But this is a good example. After giving NATO and European nations trillions and trillions of dollars in defense, they buy our weapons. We make the greatest weapons in the world, but now we're going to make them faster, much faster. You saw that. I put a cap on the salaries. Then I put no buybacks, no stock buybacks, no various other things that they were doing. I mean, they were making $50 million, but it would take them 3 years to give you a Patriot missile. I said, that's not good. My chauffeur can do a better job than that, and he makes slightly less than 50. They make big salaries. If they're going to make those big salaries, they're going to have to produce a lot faster. The good news is we have the greatest equipment in the world. Now we're going to start making it a lot faster. They're going to build additional plants. And all of the money that goes into stock buybacks is going to go into building plants. We're not allowing stock buybacks by defense companies any longer. They're going to build new plants to make Tomahawks, Patriots. We have the best equipment, F-35s, F-47, the new one just coming out. They say it's the most devastating plane, fighter jet ever. Who knows? They called it 47. If I don't like it, I'm going to take the 47 off it. I wonder why they called it 47. We'll have to think about that. But if I don't like it, I'm going to take that 47 off. But it's supposed to be the Stage 6. It's supposed to be the first Stage 6 plane, undetectable, like our B-2 bombers were undetectable. They flew right over Iran. They were undetectable. And they did their job, and they got the hell out of there. So we want a piece of ice for world protection, and they won't give it. We've never asked for anything else, and we could have kept that piece of land, and we didn't. So they have a choice. You can say yes, and we will be very appreciative, or you can say no, and we will remember. A strong and secure America means a strong NATO, and that's one reason why I'm working every day to ensure our military is very powerful, our borders are very strong, and above all, our economy is strong because national security requires economic security and economic prosperity, and we have the greatest that we've ever had. Biden and his allies destroyed our economy and gave us perhaps the worst inflation in American history. They say 48 years, I say forever, but I think 48 years is the equivalent to forever. Whether it's 48 years or ever, it's terrible, costing the typical family $33,000. What they did to this country should never, ever be forgotten. It's early, but he has to be rated as the worst president we've ever had by far. The auto pen did much of the damage. The auto pen, he was the auto pen president, because I don't believe a sane president would have ever signed the kind of things that he signed. But now grocery prices, energy prices, airfares, mortgage rates, rent, and car payments are all coming down, and they're coming down fast. We inherited a mess, but we've done a hell of a job in 12 months. Under my most favored nation policy for drug prices, the cost of prescription drugs is coming down by up to 90%, depending on the way you calculate. You could also say 5, 6, 7, 800%. There are two ways of figuring that. But we have a favored nations policy that every president wanted, no president was able to get. I got it, and other nations approved it. And I had to use tariffs in order to get it because they said, no way. In other words, a pill that costs 10% in London costs $130. Think it costs $10 in London, costs $130 in New York or in Los Angeles. And I'd say, boy, that's bad. Friends of mine would say, you know, we go to London, you can buy the stuff for nothing. We go all over the world, we can buy it for nothing. Because basically America was subsidizing every nation in the world because presidents allowed them to get away with it. It became very tough. So when I called up Emmanuel Macron, I watched him yesterday with those beautiful sunglasses. What the hell happened? But I watched him sort of be tough. But he was at $10 for a pill. And I said, Emmanuel, and I have all the big pharmaceutical companies are in total agreement. It wasn't easy, by the way. They're tough, smart. They've been getting away with the scam for a long time. But they gave it up. But they said, you'll never get the countries to approve it. I said, why is that? Because they won't. They always said, we're not paying any more. Get the rest for the United States. So over the years, they stayed the same. We just went up, up, up. And I mean, we would pay 13, 14, 15 times more than certain countries would. So I said, no, they'll approve it 100%. Sir, you'll never get them to approve it. I said, I guarantee you. But I actually started with Emmanuel, who probably is in the room too. And I like him. I actually like him. Hard to believe, isn't it? And I said, Emmanuel, you're going to have to lift the price of that pill to $20, maybe $30. Think of that. That means it's a doubling. a doubling of prescription drugs. Might be a tripling, might be a quadrupling. It's not easy. No, 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 Donald, I will not do that. I said, yes, you will, 100%. He said, no, no, no. You're asking me to double. I said, Emmanuel, you've been taking advantage of the United States for 30 years with prescription drugs. You really should do it, and you will do it. I have no doubt. In fact, I am 100% sure you're going to. No, 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 I will not do it. Because, yes, in all fairness, he has to double or triple. Because the world being a bigger place than the United States, it's not that you meet in the middle. You just have to go up some, and we come down a lot. They go up a little, we come down a lot. So we're at $130, they're at 10. So they may have to go to 20 or 30. No more than that. I said, Emmanuel, you're going to be doubling or tripling? No, no, no. I said, here's the story, Emmanuel. The answer is you're going to do it, you're going to do it fast. And if you don't, I'm putting a 25% tariff on everything that you sell into the United States and a 100% tariff on your wines and champagnes. And that's about 10 times more than what I'm requesting. And you're going to do it. I don't want to go public with it, but you may make me do that. No, no, Donald, I will do it. I will do it. It took me, on average, 3 minutes a country, saying the same thing. You will do it. They all said, no, 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 I will not do it. You're asking me to double the cost of prescription. I said, that's right, because you've been screwing us for 30 years. And they said, we will not do it. I said, that's all right. On Monday morning, we're putting a 25, 30, 50. I gave different numbers for different countries. This is also national security we're talking about. Not fair. We're not going to subsidize the whole world. And every one of those countries have agreed to do it. So one of the biggest things that I've done is the fact that we have now most favored nation. We will pay whatever the lowest price is in the entire world. So our drug prices are going to be coming down by staggering 90%. Again, you could say 1,000%, 2,000%. Depends on the way you want to figure it, but we'll go with the way the fake news likes it better because it sounds, can you imagine a 90% reduction sounds much worse. But drug prices are going to be coming down tremendously in all the nations, and I appreciate them doing it, but they did it. In all fairness, without tariffs, I wouldn't have been able to get it done. After declining $3,000 under Biden, real incomes are up in the United States by $2,000, $3,000, and even $5,000 and more. Home ownership has always been a symbol of health and vigor of American society, but that goal fell out of reach for millions and millions of people in the Biden era because interest rates went up so high. Today, I'm taking action to bring back this bedrock of the American dream. In recent years, Wall Street giants and institutional investment firms, many of you are here, many of you are good friends of mine, many of you are supporters. Sorry to do this, Joe, I'm so sorry. But you've driven up housing prices by purchasing hundreds of thousands of single-family homes, and it's been a great investment for them. Often as much as 10% of houses on the market. You know, the crazy thing is a person can't get depreciation on a house, but when a corporation buys it, they get depreciation. Okay, that's something we're going to have to think about, too. I don't know if too many people think about that. You buy a corporation, they buy 500 houses. They buy hundreds of thousands. They buy 500 houses. They can take depreciation. A person sweats and works and buys one house, they can't. But homes are built for people, not for corporations, and America will not become a nation of renters. We're not going to do that. That's why I have signed an executive order banning large institutional investors from buying single-family homes. It's just not fair to the public. They're not able to buy a house. And I'm calling on Congress to pass that ban into permanent law, and I think they will. One of the biggest barriers to saving for a down payment has been surging credit card debt. The profit margin for credit card companies now exceeds 50%, one of the biggest. And they charge Americans interest rates of 28%, 30%, 31%, 32%. Whatever happened to usury? So to help our citizens recover from the Biden disaster, all caused by this horrible president, just horrible president. I'm asking Congress to cap credit card interest rates at 10% for 1 year. And this will help millions of Americans save for a home. They have no idea they're paying 28%. They go out there a little late in their payment and they end up losing their house. It's terrible. To unleash innovation in savings and financing, I'm also working to ensure America remains the crypto capital of the world. And to that end, last year I signed the landmark Genius Act into law. Now Congress is working very hard on crypto market structure legislation, Bitcoin, all of them, which I hope to sign very soon, unlocking new pathways for Americans to reach financial freedom. And I did it for two reasons. Number one, I thought it was politically good, and it was. I got tremendous political support. But more importantly, China wanted that market too. It's just like they want the AI. And we've got that market, I think, pretty well locked up. If I didn't do it, Biden was totally against it until before the election, when they realized that, there were millions of people voting against him over crypto. And all of a sudden they loved it very much, but it was too late. They blew it. But it is politically popular, but it's much more importantly, we have to make it so that China doesn't get the hold of it. And once they have that hold, we're not going to be able to get it back. So I'm honored to have done it. Finally, I've instructed government-backed institutions to purchase up to $200 billion in mortgage bonds to bring down interest rates. And I'll be announcing a new Fed chairman in the not-too-distant future. I think he'll do a very good job. See, I gave away some of it. He did give that away. So we have something, got something, but somebody that's very respected. They're all respected. They're all great. Everyone that I interviewed is great. Everyone could do, I think, a fantastic job. Problem is they change once they get the job. They do. They're saying everything I want to hear, and then they get the job. They're locked in for 6 years. They get the job, and all of a sudden, let's raise rates a little bit. I call them, sir, we'd rather not talk about this. It's amazing how people change once they have the job. But it's too bad. Sort of disloyalty, but they got to do what they think is right. We have a terrible chairman right now. Jerome, too late Powell. He's always too late. And he's very late with interest rates, except before the election. He was just fine for the other side. So we're going to have somebody that's great, and we hope he does the right job. Last week, the average 30-year mortgage rate dropped below 6% for the first time in many years. Another major factor in driving up housing costs was the mass invasion of our borders. And I have to say one thing about housing, because nobody ever says this. I am very protective of people that already own a house, of which we have millions and millions and millions. And because we have had such a good run, the house values have gone up tremendously. And these people have become wealthy. They weren't wealthy. They become wealthy because of their house. And every time you make it more and more and more affordable for somebody to buy a house cheaply, you're actually hurting the value of those houses, obviously, because the one thing works in tandem with the other. And I don't want to do anything that's going to hurt the value of people that own a house, who for the first time in their lives are walking around the streets of whatever city they're in, very proud that their house is worth $500,000, $600,000, $700,000. Now, if I want to really crush the housing market, I could do that so fast and people could buy houses, but you would destroy a lot of people that already have houses. In some cases, they've mortgaged their house, and the mortgage would be very low, and all of a sudden the mortgage without any changes becomes very high, and they end up losing the house. I'm not going to hurt, and I speak with Scott, who's doing a fantastic job, and Howard, who's doing a fantastic job, and all of my people. And I always say, look, I can crush the hell out of the market. We can drop interest rates to a level, and that's one thing we do want to do. That's natural. That's good for everybody. The dropping of the interest rates, we should be paying a much lower interest rate than we are. We should be paying the lowest interest rate of any country in the world, because without the United States, you don't have a country. I mean, I had a case with Switzerland. We happened to be in Switzerland. Maybe I'll give you a quick story. But they were paying nothing. They make beautiful watches, great watches, Rolex, all of them. They were paying nothing to the United States when they sent their product in. And we had a $41 billion deficit. $41 billion with this beautiful place. Flew over it, isn't it nice? So I said, let's put a 30% tariff on them so that we get back some of it, not all of it at all. We still have a deficit, big deficit. We had 41 million. That's a big deficit. And I said, let's put a tariff on. Different tariffs, different places. You're all party to them. In some cases, victims to them. But in the end, it's a fair thing. And most of you realize that. But we put a 30% tariff on Switzerland, and all hell broke loose. They were calling, I mean, like you wouldn't believe. And I know so many people from Switzerland, incredible place, incredible, brilliant place. But I didn't realize that they're only good because of us. And there's so many other examples. I mean, us, probably other places, but a majority of the money they make is because of us, because we never charged them anything. So they come in, they sell their watches, no tariffs, no nothing. They walk away, they make $41 billion on just us. So I said, no, we can't do that. So I'm going to bring it up. I still would have a deficit pretty substantial, but I brought it up to 30%. And I guess Prime Minister, I don't think President, I think Prime Minister called a woman, and she was very repetitive. She said, no, 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 you cannot do that, 30%. You cannot do that. We are a small, small country. I said, yeah, but you have a big, big deficit. You may be small, but you have a bigger deficit than big countries. He said, no, 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 please, you cannot do it. Kept saying the same thing over and over. We are a small country. I said, but you're a big country in terms of... And she just rubbed me the wrong way, I'll be honest with you. And I said, all right, thank you, ma'am, appreciate it. Do not do this. Thank you very much, ma'am. And I made it 39%. And then all hell really broke out. And I was paid visits by everybody. Rolex came to see me. They all came to see me. But I realized, and I reduced it, because I don't want to hurt people. I don't want to hurt them. And we brought it down to a, lower level. Doesn't mean it's not going up. But we brought it down to a lower level. But they pay now, tariff. But I realized that we have many places like that where they're making a fortune because of the United States. Without the United States, they wouldn't be making anything. Think of it. Switzerland made $41 billion on us. And as she said, it's a small place. And I realized with that, I don't know, it was so, because she was so aggressive. And I realized in that conversation that the United States is keeping the whole world afloat. Many places, I could give you 6, 7 places just in the people in this little area. I know every one of them. They're looking down. They don't want to see me. They don't want to stare me in the eyes. But they're taking advantage of, everybody took advantage of the United States. But I've been very fair, and I gave them a tariff, and it was fine. But I realized that without us, it's not Switzerland anymore. Without us, it's not any of the countries that are represented here. And we want to work with the countries. We want to work with them. We're not looking to destroy them. I could have said 39, 40%. I could have said I want a 70% tariff, then we make money with Switzerland. But Switzerland would have been probably destroyed, financially destroyed. I don't want to do that. But we should be paying the lowest interest rate of everybody. I hope Scott's listening to this, because we should be paying the lowest interest rate of everybody. Without us, most of the countries don't even work. And then you have the protection factor. Without our military, which is the greatest in the world by far, without our military, you have threats that you wouldn't believe. You wouldn't believe. You don't have threats because of us, and that's because of NATO. One other thing, and I have to say it so importantly, in the old days, and I used to say I'm the youngest in the room. Now I'm among the older. I hate to say it. I don't feel old, but I'm among the older. But I remember not long ago, 20, 25 years ago, when good news came out about, let's say, the United States. The United States had a great quarter. The United States had a great month. All the stocks went up. And that's the way it's supposed to be. Now when they say the United States had a record quarter, it's unbelievable how well it's doing, all the stocks crash because they say, oh no, inflation, they're going to raise interest rates. And they do. Some of these stupid people like Powell, they raise interest rates. And what they do is they stop you from being successful. It used to be when we had a great quarter, a great month, great earnings, great anything, any good news, the stock market went up. That's the way it's going to be. We got to do that again because that's the way it should be. Now when we have a great month, they want to kill it. Like we did over 5%. People were surprised. We should do 20%. We could do 25%. When we announce good numbers, and the reason is they're so petrified of inflation. And growth doesn't mean inflation. We've had tremendous growth with very low inflation. In fact, growth can fight inflation, proper growth. So we want to get back to the days when we announce great numbers because we're going to be announcing phenomenal. You know, all these factories that are being built at record, thousands of businesses are being built right now. Remember, $18 trillion is invested. I think the second number is 3. And that was China many years ago. Investments in the country from outside. 18 trillion, nobody's ever seen. And that's money coming in and building things, factories. Thousands of businesses are being built, thousands. Hundreds of big factories, car plants are moving back to the United States. They're coming in from Canada, they're coming in from Mexico, from Japan. Japan's coming in and building plants here in order to avoid tariffs. They're coming in from China. They're coming in from all over the world. We have more plants being built now, car plants, than we've ever had built, even in the heyday from the 1940s and 50s. And they're bigger. They don't use renovations anymore where they take an old plant, they rip it down, they build a brand new plant, super modern plant. But it's happening at levels that nobody's ever seen. In 2024, the U.S. built less than 2 million new homes, but Biden admitted more than 8 million new migrants. And those days are over. In 2025, for the first time in 50 years, the United States had reverse migration. Boy, that was nice. And these were criminals that were being taken out of our country because they allowed people to come into our country from jails, from gangs, drug dealers, murderers. 11,888 murderers. We've gotten most of them out. And then ICE gets beat up by stupid people from leadership in Minnesota. We actually are helping Minnesota so much, but they don't appreciate it. Most places do. You know, Washington, D.C. is the safest place now in the United States. It was a very dangerous place to walk, and now you can walk with your wife, your kids, right through the middle of the city. Right now, Washington, D.C. is as safe as it gets. It was one of the most unsafe, I had to admit. We sent in the military, the National Guard. Within 2 months, it was great. Within 3 months, it's like a really great place and a safe place and a beautiful place. It's even been cleaned up. The graffiti's gone. The fences are gone. We don't have to worry about fences anymore. All of the places, the grasses are cut and replaced with new grass in many cases. It's all going to happen in the spring. But Washington and D.C. is beautiful again, and it's safe. New restaurants are opening up. They were all closing. Now you can't get into a restaurant. Restaurants in Washington, D.C. are all opening. Memphis also, Memphis, Tennessee, New Orleans, Louisiana. We're there for 3 weeks. We've cut the crime down by 64%. Within another month, we'll have virtually no crime there. We can do that all over. We're going to help the people in California. We want to have no crime. I know Gavin was here. I used to get along so great with Gavin when I was president. Gavin's a good guy. And we're going to, if he needed it, I would do it in a heartbeat. I'd love to see. We did help them a lot in Los Angeles, a lot with the early in my term when they had some problems. but we would love to do it. I will say this, if I were a Democrat governor or whatever, I would call up Trump. I'd say, come on in, make us look good, because we're cutting crime down to nothing. And we're taking people out, career criminals who are only going to do bad things, and we're bringing them back to their countries. But where we've done it has been amazing, and we have a capacity to do it at much greater levels. We're cutting illegal aliens off welfare and other government benefits, and I have directed that starting immediately, there will be no more payments to sanctuary cities, because they are really just sanctuaries for criminals. They're really protecting criminals, and those are the ones we have to get out of the country: murderers, drug dealers, the mentally insane. They emptied their mental institutions into the United States. And despite that, we have the lowest crime numbers that we've ever had in the history of the country. Just came out. But equally importantly, we're cracking down on more than $19 billion in fraud that was stolen by Somalian bandits. Can you believe that Somalia, they turned out to be higher IQ than we thought? I always say these are low IQ people. How did they go into Minnesota and steal all that money? And we have, you know, they're pirates, they're good pirates, right? But we shoot them out of the water just like we shoot the drug boats out. They're not pirating too many boats lately, do you notice? When they go out into those boats, they want to take over $1.5 billion tanker loaded up with oil, and they say, we're going to blow up your boat. They have powerful weapons. You hit the side of the boat, you blow the whole thing up. The insurance companies are petrified, so they say, just give them the boat. We'll give them money instead. And I don't do that. We blow them right the hell out of the water. We see them going out, we blow them out of the water. We don't have any pirates so much anymore. If we do, they won't be there long. We've cut down with the hitting of the boats that are loaded up with drugs, including submarines. Can you believe they actually buy small, they call them mini subs, very fast. They're meant for drugs. We've knocked out 2 of them. The Democrats say they were fishing. You have ruined somebody's fishing weekend. I would say a submarine is not a fishing boat. You don't fish. But we've knocked down drugs by water, the oceans, the sea, by 97.2%. Think of that. And I actually say, who the hell are the 3%? Because I would not want to be piloting one of those boats. We knocked them down, and now we're going to start on land. We're going to knock it all out. The land is the easy part. What we did on sea is incredible, and that's our great military. The situation in Minnesota reminds us that the West cannot mass import foreign cultures which have failed to ever build a successful society of their own. I mean, we're taking people from Somalia, and Somalia is a failed, it's not a nation. Got no government, got no police, got no military, got no nothing. And then we have this fake congressperson who they just reported is worth $30 million. You believe this? Ilhan Omar, talking about the Constitution that provides me. She comes from a country that's not a country, and she's telling us how to run America. Not going to get away with it much longer, let me tell you. The explosion of prosperity and conclusion and progress that built the West did not come from our tax codes. It ultimately came from our very special culture. This is the precious inheritance that America and Europe have in common. We share it. We share it, but we have to keep it strong. We have to become stronger, more successful, and more prosperous than ever. We have to defend that culture and rediscover the spirit that lifted the West from the depths of the Dark Ages to the pinnacle of human achievement. We live in an incredible, changing period. It's an unbelievable time, but we have to take advantage of the time that we're in. In our hands are technologies that our ancestors could scarcely have. I mean, they couldn't have even dreamt some of the things that we see today. And so rapidly they're produced. I mean, AI, 2 years ago, nobody ever heard of the term, and now everybody's talking about it. And it can have some very good purpose. It could also have some dangerous purpose, and for that we have to watch out. But some tremendous things are happening because of it. And we're leading by so much. We're doing so well. But opportunities that are bigger and grander than ever before in human history are right before us. It is the pioneers in this room. Many of you in this room are true pioneers. You're true truly brilliant people. Just your ability to get a ticket is brilliant because you have about 50 people for every seat. I don't know what, that's Larry. Everything Larry touches turns to gold. He made this very successful. But you're in this room, and some of you are the greatest leaders anywhere in the world. You're the greatest brains anywhere in the world. And the future is unlimited, and to a large part because of you, and we have to protect you, and we have to cherish you. I always say we have to cherish our brilliant people because there aren't many of them. So together with confidence, boldness, and persistence, let us lift up our people, grow our economies, defend our shared destiny, and build a future for our citizens that is more ambitious, more exciting, more inspiring, and greater than the world has ever seen. We're in a position to do things that nobody else has ever even thought of before. And many of the people in this room are the ones that are doing it. And I want to congratulate you, and I'm with you all the way. You can do things that nobody else can even think about. So I congratulate you on your tremendous success. And the United States is back, bigger, stronger, better than ever before. And I'll see you around. Thank you all very much. Thank you very much. Thank you.
The president of the World Economic Forum in Davos with a lengthy speech there where there have been tensions between so many of the people in that room and the president.
Absolutely. Certainly a headline here. You see it on the bottom of your screen. President Trump saying he will not use force to acquire Greenland. That is not something we had heard from him prior. Actually, let's see if we can listen in here with the president continuing to speak on the stage at the World Economic Forum.
Thank you, Mr. President, for your speech. I do have a few follow-up questions, if it's okay. I don't think I should start with Greenland, maybe. I'll start with the economy. The U.S. economy is doing really well. But how to sustain this growth moving forward? Because there's always a recession looming around the corner.
Well, you know, the one thing about economies and recessions is sometimes you get hit unexpectedly and there's nothing you can do about it. All brilliant people, but there's nothing. One example was COVID. We had an economy going at levels like nobody had ever seen my first 2.5, 3 years. And then I heard the word pandemic, not COVID. They came up with that name over a period of time. We won't get into that. But I heard the word pandemic. And I had a poll come out that was so strong just prior to that. And I was with the two best pollsters, McLaughlin and Fabrizio. And they said, sir, George Washington and Abraham Lincoln, if they came back and ran as president and vice president, they couldn't beat you. And then what happened is the following day, I was told to stay tuned because there's something really bad happening in China. There are bodies laying all over Wuhan, right around that certain building that we talk about. I always said it came from Wuhan. It did come from Wuhan. And they were body bags. We saw it by satellite. And they said, there are strange things happening in China. And so it began. And we ended up with the COVID, and the whole world suffered. We did a phenomenal job. I don't think we got the credit we deserved. We did something that Operation Warp Speed, which some people say was one of the greatest military feats ever. We did a great job. Used our military, used a lot of people. But sometimes you get hit with things, nothing you can do. You get hit with things like that unexpectedly. And we got through it. And when I left, the stock market was higher than it was previous to the COVID coming up. And that was, I called it a great achievement. But things happen. Bad things happen. The things that we can stop are wars if we're smart. That we can stop. Those are a matter of being intelligent and having intelligent people on the other side, because wars are the worst of all. Wars are worse than anything. But we can stop wars because that's sort of up to us. But things like dust flying in the air, wherever COVID comes from or whatever comes, sometimes you have to be a little bit lucky. But we are poised to have an economy like no other, not only in this country, but anywhere. And you know, when you hear the kind of numbers that I can tell you that Scott Bessent was with me the other day, and he's looking at numbers. He said, I can't. And that's all he's done his whole life, pretty much your whole life. Scott, you weren't going to be a football player, I don't think. Scott was not that great at football, but he was always good at numbers, right? And he was looking at numbers. He said, I've never seen anything like this. We're poised to do things that no other country's ever done. And, you know, luck, I hate to say it, but we need a little luck. We don't want to get hit by something that nobody could have thought. Whoever thought we were going to hit by a pandemic? You know, when I heard the word pandemic, I said, oh, that's an ancient problem. World War I, they lost 100 million people. It actually ended World War I. A lot of people don't know. The Spanish flu in World War I ended the war because all the soldiers were sick. The soldiers were so sick on both sides, and that war was raging, and they were all dying from the Spanish flu. They were sick as dogs. They couldn't fight. So, you know, you don't know how that would have turned out. But so we do, I mean, subject to that, and I always have to put a caveat in for it, but we're poised to have the greatest growth of any large country, I think any country that there's been. When you look at what's happening in the United States, it's really amazing.
Thank you. One thing that maybe keeps you up at night, I know you don't sleep that much anyway, Mr. President, is the debt. The U.S. debt is high, is now the biggest expenditure on your budget. How to get out of that impasse?
Well, the big thing is growth. I mean, growth is the way. If we grow like this, we go from having at $37 trillion. We go from having high debt to low debt. But we also are cutting expenses, you know, the old-fashioned way. We have extraordinary growth. I think we're going to be growing our way out. I think we're going to be paying off debt. We're taking in tremendous money from tariffs fairly. And again, I'm using them judiciously. You know, Switzerland's a case study. I could have gotten much more. I could have asked for much more. But we're using them judiciously. But I think growth, most importantly, and then cutting costs. Now, if you take a look at Minnesota, $19 billion in fraud and other things. People going to airports, they came into the country, they don't have 10 cents, and they're leaving with hundreds of thousands of cash in their bags. When we get to that, and our DOJ, Pam, and Todd, and all the people that work over there, and all of the people that work in here, I can tell you, Scott Bessent is working on that. It's a priority, right? You have your whole team. We're in there looking for where this money is coming from, how much it is. It could be more than $19 billion. Can you believe that? That's just one state. If we were able to cut out 50% of the fraud, 50%, and we should be able to do better than that, we would have a balanced budget without having to talk about even growth. So we have a lot of options, but we're working very hard on that. That's a big deal. It's not just the protests, the fake protests done by agitators and, you know, professional insurrectionists. That's what they are. They're professional troublemakers. But we are looking very strong at the money, too, in Minnesota and other places.
I think, Mr. President, also the $500 billion invested in artificial intelligence and the frontier technologies last year also were driving growth exponentially in the U.S.
Well, AI has been a big factor. AI is massive. I mean, Mark Zuckerberg showed me a plant where he put it over a map of Manhattan, and it was basically the size of Manhattan. This is not, I said, you got to be kidding. It's a plant that was miles long, miles wide, very high. I don't think it was high like the Empire State Building, but it was high. And it literally covered most of the island of Manhattan. That's called a big plant. And, you know, when I heard they're going to spend $50 billion building it, I said, what, you know, if you spend $50 million, you can build a nice little shopping center. If you spend $500 million, you can build a good shopping center. But how do you spend $50 billion? When I looked at this thing, I said, you think you'll be able to do it for that? It's amazing when, you know, some of the plants that I see, and I see them all. And again, so big is we're letting them build their own electric generation. This way we have no problem. And otherwise they'd be complaining. There'd be nobody able to, you know, we have an old grid system. And not only that, they're going to sell at a very cheap price the excess electricity that they create back into our grid. So that'll solve some problems for certain states that don't have enough electricity.
We also know that on the AI, there is fierce competition between the U.S. as the largest economy in the world, 27% of the global GDP and 5% of the global population, not doing that badly, and China. And we know that that competition is very tough on AI. I know you're heading to a state visit to China in April. How do you see the U.S.-China relationship moving forward? Are you able to combine this tough competition with also collaboration?
So I've always had a very good relationship with President Xi and with President Putin. Talk about, you know, the larger powers. But I've always had a very good relationship with President Xi of China. He's an incredible man. What he's done is amazing. He's highly respected by everybody. And I do now. I mean, now I have good. It was very severely interrupted by COVID. I used to call it the China virus, but he said, do you think you could use a different name? And I decided to do that because why should we have a problem over that? But I would do that, and they were. You're a
true diplomat, huh?
I became a diplomat for the first time. Well, you know who taught me that? Marco Rubio. Marco Rubio. He said, let me teach you about diplomacy. Hey, any guy that gets approved by 100% of the votes, think of it, he got liberal Democrats and radical right Republicans to approve him. He's the only one. The next one was like lost 45 votes, right? But he got all 100 votes voting for him. And at first I wasn't happy about it. I said, wait a minute, I don't like that. And now it turns out that the Democrats probably wish they didn't do that. And Marco has been fantastic. Marco, stand up, please. You have done a great job as Secretary of State. He's going to go down as the best Secretary of State. And Scott, and we have Susie, who's the first female Chief of Staff, and she's the best Chief of Staff, too. And I see Howard Lutnick, who I know spoke. And Howard's fantastic. Some of the deals we're doing are great. And I want to pay particular attention because we have Chris. And Chris, you got up and spoke, I think. He's the #1 oil man in the world because I was going to put Doug Burgum, who's fantastic. I don't know if Doug's here. Is Doug here? Doug Burgum is fantastic. He said, sir, there's one man better than me. And he introduced me to Chris. And he turns out to be. So we're drilling more oil and gas now than we ever have by almost double. Is that right, Chris? And on top of it, we got a lot coming out of Venezuela. So anyway, so we're doing great. The country is just doing great. We have great people. Thank you. And I see other people. We have Steve Witkoff. We have Jared. I got so many people. I'm in trouble because when I go back, they're going to be people with long faces. Sir, you didn't introduce me. I got so many people. And we have a lot of the greatest people anywhere in the world. I know them all. So I won't continue because we'd be here all day.
Thank you, Mr. President. We also know that you're a deal maker, and then maybe coming back to Greenland and Ukraine. What kind of deal in the end do you see between the U.S. And Denmark? Because, you know, I guess you see it now as a negotiation going on, or?
Well, it's costing Denmark hundreds of millions a year to run it. And Denmark's a small country and wonderful people. But, you know, it's very expensive. It's a very big piece of ice. And it's very important. I mean, I don't want to repeat the speech, but it's very important that we use that for national and international security. That can create a power that will make it impossible for the bad guys to do anything against the perceived good ones. And it's a great block for Europe, just like, you know, Denmark was supposed to spend hundreds of millions of dollars. They didn't spend the money. They didn't spend anything almost. And we'll see what happens. I just say this. NATO has treated the United States of America very unfairly. We never asked for anything. We never got anything. We actually took care of the needs of NATO for years and years, which I felt was always unfair. So I got NATO to pay because they're rich countries. But I think it's time that NATO step up. We're helping them with Ukraine. without us, I think Putin would have gone all the way. I think we have it. I think there could have been a World War III, if you want to know the truth. If Kamala was elected, or Joe, any one of those, those thinkers, I think you could have ended up in World War III. And I will say Steve Witkoff has been dealing incredibly with, but we're not going to have World War III. We want to get it stopped, but we're not going to have World War III. I think if I wasn't elected, I think that could have evolved into World War III. It was a very, very bad situation, and it still is, but it's not that kind of bad. It's bad because so many young people are being killed.
How close do you think there is on an agreement on Ukraine? I had the pleasure of speaking with Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner yesterday. I know they're working hard on it. I know that they're also traveling now. Do you see this very close or still?
Well, I hate to say it. I thought that was going to be, so I settled 8 wars plus. And I thought that was going to be one of my easier ones. Not the easiest. Some I settled in a matter of hours because I'm good at that stuff. The United Nations should be doing this. I shouldn't be doing it, but it doesn't matter. It's got to get done, saving a lot of lives. We're saving millions of lives. With Ukraine, Russia, there's tremendous hatred between President Zelensky and President Putin. That's not good. That's not good for settlements. We know from dealing. There's abnormal hatred. With that being said, I think Russia wants to make a deal. I think Ukraine wants to make a deal. And we're going to try getting a deal done. I think I can say that we're reasonably close. But what happens is oftentimes we'll have a deal with Russia. Russia's set, and President Zelensky will not do it. You saw that when he was in the Oval Office. I was not happy. And then we'll have President Zelensky who wants to make a deal, and Putin doesn't want to make the deal. It's a very difficult balance, and it's big time, and it is, to use a word, it's a bloodbath. It's horrible what's happening. It's a drone war. The drones are killing, thousands of people a week, thousands. We have to get it stopped. So I believe they're at a point now. I'm going to meet with President Zelensky later today. I believe they're at a point now where they can come together and get a deal done. And if they don't, they're stupid. That goes for both of them. And I know they're not stupid. But if they don't get this done, they are stupid. So I don't want to insult anyone, but you got to get this deal done. Too many people are dying. It's not worth it.
President Sisi is sitting on the first row here. He spoke earlier today and also complimented you on the Gaza deal. I think there will be a signing tomorrow. Of course, there are different views on this, but how important do you think this signing is on the Board of Peace? And do you think this is going to sustain? Do you think we now will see Gaza reconstructed and the billions of US dollars invested?
I do. I mean, I think we have peace in the Middle East. There are some little situations like Hamas, and Hamas has agreed to give up their weapons. Now, they were born with a weapon in their hand, so it's not easy to do. When they were born with a rifle in their hand. It's not an easy thing for them, but that's what they agreed to. They've got to do it. And we're going to know, Jared, over the next 2 or 3 days, certainly over the next 3 weeks, whether or not they're going to do it. If they don't do it, they'll be blown away very quickly. They'll be blown away. We have 59 countries that are part of that whole peace deal. And some of those countries aren't even they're near the Middle East, but they're not in the Middle East traditionally. And they want to come in and take out Hamas. They want to come in. They want to do whatever they can. There's a problem with Hezbollah in Lebanon, and we'll see what happens there, but that's a problem. But there are these little flames, but there's peace in the Middle East. Now, had we not gone in and knocked out with those big, beautiful, we just ordered 25 brand new ones, the latest and the greatest, the B-2 bomber. Think of them, they went in there at 2 o'clock in the morning with no moon, no light, no nothing, and every single one of those massive bombs hit its target, 100,000-pound bombs hit its target, every one of them. And then on top of it, from a submarine 300 miles away, we hit the sites with tomahawks, which is an unbelievable weapon. So, we did our job. If we didn't do that, you would have never had peace in the Middle East. And the countries like Saudi Arabia, UAE, and Qatar could never have, and others could never have signed anything because you would have had this dark cloud, and the dark cloud was Iran with nuclear. Iran would, if we didn't take them out, they would have had a nuclear weapon within 2 months. They were very close to having the nuclear weapon, and we hit them hard. And it was a total obliteration. If they may try again, but they're going to have to try from a different area because that area was obliterated. Incredible thing we did. And because we did that, we were able to make peace. If we didn't do that, I would say, Jared and Steve, if we didn't do that, there was no chance of making peace because the countries I just named and other countries could have never signed off. They were afraid. They were afraid. We had a bully. The bully was Iran, the bully of the Middle East. They used to call it for years. They were the bully of the Middle East. They're not the bully of the Middle East anymore.
Mr. President, I know you even had to change plane last night, so I guess you didn't have much sleep, but I think you're... but your energy is still there. I know you have several bilateral meetings. I know you're also hosting a reception. So thank you so much for coming back to Davos. Thank you so much. It's highly appreciated.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you, everybody, very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
You've been listening to President Trump on stage at the World Economic Forum, first with a lengthy speech and then sitting down for a few questions there. Of course, though, a major headline coming out of this, despite the president spending much of the time touting what he's done with the economy here at home, this major headline that he says he will not use military force in order to acquire Greenland.
Let's go back to our senior White House correspondent, Gabe Gutierrez, who is following this for us. I mean, that was a big headline. Another big headline that we've just learned is the EU Parliament is not going to ratify a U.S.-EU trade deal that was very, high-profile at the president's own golf club in Scotland was agreed to this summer. That has been undone by the president's own threats about Greenland and tariffs against countries that don't support him.
Yeah, that's right, Christine and Savannah. A lot to unpack here, and the president of the United States just shattered or took a sledgehammer really to decades of American foreign policy in that speech, really a shattering of norms, so to speak. And we had heard from White House officials to expect an America First speech, and that's exactly what that was. As you mentioned, the speech itself lasting more than an hour. We also had some Q&A that we just heard from. But yes, recapping the major headlines, President Trump saying that he would not use force to acquire Greenland. However, he did say that he was calling for negotiations to acquire Greenland. Several times during the speech, he said that he did have respect for the people of Greenland and the people of Denmark. Still, though, at least several times during the speech, 4 by our count, he mistakenly referred to Greenland as Iceland. He also kept repeating that Greenland was, quote, a big piece of ice. And he says that only the U.S. can protect and secure Greenland, certainly drawing an icy response from world leaders at the World Economic Forum and Davos. And as you said, while the president was speaking, we received word that the European Parliament had halted negotiations on that trade deal that had previously been agreed to. The president also confirming that he would meet with Ukrainian President Zelensky later on today. And there was also a notable moment, Savannah and Christine, when President Trump was speaking directly to the Canadian Prime Minister, basically saying that Canada, quote, should be grateful and that Canada, quote, lives because of the U.S. He also said that he would not, that acquiring Greenland would not be a threat to NATO, but that it would enhance NATO. Now, this started as a speech with President Trump ticking off economic accomplishments that he says he had achieved during his first year of his second term. Some of the beginning part of that speech really sounded quite a bit like the press conference that we saw yesterday at the White House here in Washington, where the president was, in his view, taking a victory lap for that first year of his administration. But Savannah and Christine, I'll send it back to you with just a bigger thought here, in the sense that previous presidents, when they left American soil, it would be very difficult to imagine that they would speak so negatively about domestic politics, leave partisan rhetoric basically here at home. The president did not during his speech. He referred to the radical Democrats. He referred to his predecessor, President Biden, several times during in very starkly negative terms. And that's something that we've seen before from him in his trips abroad, but certainly in this speech, one where he not only took aim at his domestic critics, but also critics internationally. This was, in his view, a very America First type speech, really unprecedented in that scale. Christine and Savannah.
Gabe, I want you to stay with us. I know we have a lot more to unpack, and Christine can certainly help as well on the economy. Also, even in a room like this with sort of the global elite, even invoking the challenges at the Fed currently and what we're going to see today at the Supreme Court. Before we do that, though, I do want to do a touch more on Greenland here and bring in our NBC News chief international correspondent, Keir Simmons. Keir, one of the things that also struck me about what the president was saying as he was discussing Greenland, first of all, of course, as we mentioned, major headline, him saying, at least in this speech, he would not use military force, but also really laying out a little bit more, I think, of what he and his administration see as sort of like their strategic need here, saying no one wants to defend something that you're just simply leasing, even though, of course, Article 5 of NATO is an attack on one is an attack on all. This is owned by Denmark, of course, a NATO ally. Walk us through what we heard from the president when it came to how he was sort of describing why it is that he wants Greenland and sort of how striking it was to hear what he said in that room.
Yeah, I mean, let's just say that the United States did defend Greenland right the way through the Cold War with large numbers more servicemen and women than now. And that was with the same arrangement, with bases on Greenland that are still available to the United States. That being said, I think that there will be a kind of a sigh of relief of some kind in Europe to hear him say, I will not use force, and some suspicion. Another quote, which will get fewer headlines, I think, but is important too, is he said, and addressing the audience there, many of them European leaders, he said, you can say yes, this is about Greenland, you can say yes, or you can say no, but if you say no, we will remember. And that kind of a threat will immediately raise questions for Europeans about, OK, well, what does that mean? Would that mean that you would begin to withdraw US forces from Europe? Would that mean that you would threaten to remove yourself from NATO? He actually had quite a lot of positive things to say about NATO, while suggesting that the United States has been very one-sided. I mean, we should note, of course, that it was Europe that stood behind America through NATO after the 9/11 attacks. So it's not true to say, just a little factual correction here, it's not true to say that America has never got anything from Europe over NATO. Certainly, I thought it was a very clear, expansive and understandable laying out of why he thinks Greenland is important, the reality that with climate change and just the geography, if you look at a globe, if you take a globe and look at the top of that globe, you see that China and Russia are close to the United States, and that Greenland is the landmass that's in the way, if you like. So when he talked about an iron dome protecting the United States and suggesting that he needs Greenland to do that, that's why, because it's the quickest route for a missile, for example, over Greenland to get to the United States from one of those two adversaries. So I thought that was very clear, but it's not over. That's another piece that's really clear from this. And the Europeans are bruised, they are angry, they are resentful, frankly, many of them, and I don't think that's going away quickly. And just one other point here, as we look around the globe at President Trump's foreign policy, it's having different impacts, and it's important to note that. So, for example, the removal of Maduro in Venezuela, the polling suggests that in South America, that's actually been received quite well in many countries there. In Europe, the polling suggests that America's standing has taken a bashing, frankly, because of President Trump's approach to Greenland. And I suppose one question to ask is it worth it? Is it worth pushing to own Greenland, not just have access to it? And what implications does it have that Europe increasingly the European public, many of them, not all of them, increasingly look disillusioned with the United States?
I'll say something that strikes me, everybody, is that, the stock market in the U.S. is recovering a little bit, certainly not recovering what it lost yesterday. But the big concern yesterday was about American reliability on the global stage and as a partner. And that is in question as the EU Parliament has ended negotiations with the U.S. You'll recall the EU and the U.S. are one of these early trade deals that was struck over the summer. The president, with great fanfare, when he was on a personal trip, to Scotland to one of his golf clubs, struck this deal. And this was a big win. It showed just the superior negotiating. It was the sort of the framing of the president of the United States. Now these threats about Greenland to eight countries and raising tariffs there has basically halted all the progress on trade, Keir, from earlier in the year. What is this a strategy from the White House? I mean, I'm wondering, maybe that's better for Gabe, but Keir, what is the view from Europe about, is the president a reliable partner on trade?
Well, I think one aspect of this, Christine, is important to note, and that is Europe. You have to ask yourself, what else has Europe got? Where's it going to go? Not least economically, in terms of trade. Is Germany going to turn to China, which threatens to decimate its automobile industry? In a sense, you could argue that what's happening here is, you can openly say, of course, that the United States right now is bashing its friends, but you could argue that what's happening here is that the US is bashing its friends in Europe because it can. And I have spoken to European politicians, lawmakers, members of government who frankly say, OK, we don't like it, but we don't want to rip up our relationship with the United States, despite all of this. So I think the way to look at this is in a measured way, in a measured sense. And I will say also, too, that that many in Europe, the UK, for example, I think would take this view, recognise that the United States is a democracy, that its president has the right to make decisions for the United States, and also that in the arc of history, there have been good times and bad times in the relationship, but it's survived.
We'd love to bring you back in here, and I'd love if you could also respond to the smart question that Christine just asked, just sort of from the White House's perspective, essentially back to square one when it comes to this trade deal with Europe. What's the strategy here?
Well, look, I mean, I think a lot has yet to be determined on where the president moves from here, where the administration goes from here. The White House's view is that Europe will fold eventually, and that is what the president has consistently said. He referred to it during this speech, that he basically got foreign powers to bend to his will when it came to tariffs. Several days ago, when he was asked by reporters what he thought of French President Emmanuel Macron pushing back on his plans for Greenland, he said, oh, basically he'll come around, or I'll just slap tariffs on wine and champagne coming from France. So this is a strategy that the administration plans to keep moving forward with, a strategy of basically bulldozing its way and to get its way. So, yes, the fact that the European Parliament now halting that trade deal, we have not heard a White House response specifically to that news, as it just so happened. But I would suspect that the administration's response will be, we're not backing down on this. Now, the president continuing to meet with world leaders in Davos over the next day and a half. Tomorrow, he's also set to announce more details on the so-called Board of Peace for the reconstruction of Gaza, something else that has drawn a lot of controversy. It was referenced briefly during the Q&A portion there in Davos. Among the world leaders invited, controversially, Russian President Vladimir Putin. But the president and his administration juggling multiple foreign policy crises, some would argue, of his own making, but others are ongoing. The war in Ukraine, and also the fragile ceasefire in Gaza. We expect to hear much more of that over the next day and a half as the president continues this highly significant overseas trip.
It's interesting, Gabe, the president's on this world stage where he's been told, your economy is so great. It is a strong U.S. economy ending the year quite strongly. And the president, we heard him yesterday, we heard him again today talking about how the U.S. economy is the hottest in the world, would have been dead if it weren't for him. I'm wondering if that rebranding or branding, as he's trying to do, of his first 365 days is going to land with the public. And I guess we won't know until more polls and sentiment indicators. He said, and he said this for 2 days now, Gabe, that inflation is defeated. The inflation rate is still 2.7% in this country, and there's more evidence that maybe we're just starting to see tariffs start to work their way through the economy. I mean, Andy Jassy from Amazon saying that we're starting to creep in there, those higher prices from Trump tariffs.
Christine, it's very interesting to hear the president say that. If you recall, during the last administration, I recall asking President Biden, shouting a question to him, did he think that inflation was over, that the U.S. had defeated inflation? And he basically said yes, but clearly that the American public, voters, didn't agree with him and still had very significant concerns about the economy. It's curious to see whether that might, ahead of the midterms, be playing out yet again with another administration touting the success of the economy, the strong economy, while many Americans have yet to feel it. It's something you cover every day, but certainly many polls suggest that many Americans have not are not approving of the president's handling of the economy. And to that end, Christine, the president himself is acknowledging that his message may not be landing in the way that he wants to. That's why he held that marathon news briefing yesterday at the White House. He even joked that perhaps he needed better messaging people on his staff, although he later walked that back. But we do expect the president to perhaps try to travel more and sell his economic policies in the weeks and months ahead as this midterm campaign really gets underway.
It's so interesting because it reminds me a little bit, Gabe, of the last months of the Biden administration when you had really strong jobs growth. You had inflation that was coming down and a White House that was confused or trying so hard to get that message across, and public just found it tone deaf. You have this administration, and frankly, that's one of the reasons why this president is president now. This administration now saying, wait, trying to do the same thing, rebrand the economy so that people will feel it a little bit more.
Absolutely. Gabe, I also thought just notable in a room like that with who's in the room, right, that as we discussed throughout the morning on this show, what's going on at the Fed, Jerome Too Late Powell is what he called him, with this room of the global elite there, other world leaders. Just something to have a beat of this focused on what the president sees as an issue at the Fed here at home.
Yeah, certainly. And this all comes amid a turbulent time for the Fed. Certainly the legal cases with regarding whether the president can terminate one of the members of the Fed board, Lisa Cook, and also as he goes after Jerome Powell for a number of reasons. Even the Justice Department subpoenaing Jerome Powell over the last couple of days, and Jerome Powell coming back and really, for the first time, speaking out against what he sees as, interference on behalf of the Trump administration to try and get him to lower interest rates. In that speech today, President Trump once again slamming Jerome Powell. But also, he went after many people during that speech, including some other world leaders in the room. Found it interesting that one of the people he had some praise for, although obviously criticizing him a bit, was Gavin Newsom, the California governor, widely seen as a likely presidential contender in 2028. Newsom himself clearly looking to raise his international profile. He was in the room in Davos, and this all comes as the president wages a war of words, really, against not just Newsom, but other Democratic governors, including Governor Tim Walz in Minnesota. But certainly President Trump, showing no signs of backing down on a number of fronts, whether it be international policy, whether it be domestic policy. But back to your original question, Christine, in terms of speaking about the economy, the president really trying to hit that message. Notice this was an international economic forum, and he spent he made several several mentions of what he considered positive economic developments at home, including domestic gas prices, which have gone down, Christine.
That's true. Kira, let me bring you in. Something that we found fascinating was how much time the president spent talking about Somalia. He spent more time talking about Somalia than he did Ukraine, which is in a very contested hot war right now with Russia, a conflict the president said he'd be able to fix right away when he became president. What do you make of where the president is spending his time and energy on the international front?
Well, the president understands some things, frankly, or at least, if you want to put it this way, his team does, about the world that perhaps not everyone recognizes. And Somalia, for example, is actually, excuse me, in a really important strategic location. It's by the Bab el-Mandeb, the Red Sea. I mean, that's the area where you'll remember the Houthis have been targeting commercial shipping and have had an enormous impact, this small group, an enormous impact on the world economy by being able to do that. Now, Somalia has had a terrible war for a very long time. And of course, President Trump also is looking, I mean, just it is the way he talks about it, of course, he's looking to try to solve wars, to end wars. So you can see why it would be attractive to him to pay attention there. I will say one other thing while I have you guys too. It's really notable that while he was talking, we were learning that his envoy, Steve Witkoff, and his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, would meet with President Putin tomorrow. And there is a question right now about whether Putin will join President Trump's Board of Peace. I'll tell you one reason why, for example. The constitution of that Board of Peace is stunning. Turns out to not talk about Gaza, it's a global body. And the chairman is President Trump, according to that constitution. And the chairman, President Trump, has a veto on everything. So the Russian leader, President Putin, will be asking himself, do I want to be on a board of peace with President Zelensky in which the American president gets to overrule me? Because his ambition is to be equal to the American president and any other president around the world. I say all that just to describe how some of the foreign policy that President Trump is pursuing is quite complex. And with President Trump, for President Putin, for example, you find yourself asking, are Trump and Putin friends? Are they frenemies? What's going on here? There's a lot changing, a lot happening. The tectonic plates of global diplomacy are moving, and President Trump is in the middle of it.
Certainly somewhat, I don't know, maybe chilling is the right word when he referenced speaking with Putin and knowing that Ukraine was, I think he put it as the apple of his eye. And obviously some of those comments about the people of Somalia in terms of their IQ and things like that were brought up in this address in front of world leaders. Keir Simmons and Gabe Gutierrez, thank you both for being with us throughout this. Be sure to stay with us right here on NBC News Now. We'll bring you the very latest on this breaking story throughout the day.
The news continues right now.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.